Chapter 6:18. At this moment, everyone's gaze fell on Zhou Xian. Treasure. It was no secret that Zhou Xian had a fifth-dimensional treasure. However, no one expected that Nanming Demon King would take a fancy to Zhou Xian's treasure. Zhou Xian was out of luck. Some experts revealed expressions of schadenfreude, especially the Star Lord. Although he was facing a great enemy, he was happy to see Zhou Xian die. Could Zhou Xian stop Nanming Demon King? He definitely could not. After all, Nanming Demon King was an expert on the same level as Mu Nanji. Although it was only a clone, it was not something that Zhou Xian could contend with. Nanming Demon King looked at Zhou Xian with a fiery gaze. He was about to speak when an illusory Xiao Ta appeared in Zhou Xian's palm. In the next moment, Zhou Xian threw the prison pagoda to the side. It landed in front of the little girl. Everyone, the little girl looked at the prison pagoda expressionlessly. At this moment, Nanming Demon King's gaze fell on the little girl. In the sky, the Star Lord's expression became extremely gloomy. He did not expect Zhou Xian to be so decisive and directly hand over the treasure. Not only did this perfectly resolve his crisis, but it also successfully attracted Nanming Demon King's attention to the divine nation. Misfortune was diverted. Zhou Xian's expression was calm and no one could tell that he was angry. Not far away, the little girl looked at the prison pagoda. In the end, she opened her palm and the prison pagoda landed in her palm. Fifth-dimensional treasure? Nan Gongwan, who was standing beside the little girl, nodded. This should be the treasure from the fifth dimension. The little girl lightly pointed at the prison pagoda and said softly, "Interesting." At this moment, a pressure suddenly enveloped the little girl. She looked up and in the next moment, a ray of sword light directly crushed the pressure. Seeing this scene, Demon Monarch Nanming narrowed his eyes. Sword God. The little girl ignored the Nanming Demon Monarch and continued to examine the world prison pagoda in her hands. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. At this moment, Nanming Demon King took a step forward and looked down at the little girl. "Are you going to hand it over yourself or do you want me to kill you and take it for myself?" Hearing that, the little girl looked up at Nanming Demon Monarch. "Who do you think you are?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly soared into the sky. Buzz! A sword cry tore through the sky. Everyone looked up. In the air, Nanming Demon King squinted his eyes. He had not expected this little girl to take the initiative. His gaze turned cold and in the next instant, a powerful pressure pressed down from above. A tearing sound suddenly resounded in the sky. In the next moment, the space in an area of tens of thousands of kilometers trembled violently. At this moment, the little girl had already returned to her original position. The sky had also returned to normal. Nanming Demon King was still standing there, but at this moment his body was completely illusory, almost transparent to the point of being invisible. Seeing this scene, the Demon Monarch's face instantly turned ugly. In the air, Nanming Demon King stared at the little girl below. Genius! As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared completely. After Nanming Demon King disappeared, the little girl below looked up at the Star Lord and the others in the sky. Kill! In the next moment, several powerful auras shot towards the Star Lord and the others. Seeing this scene, the faces of the Star Lord and the others changed. They were only at the Tendo realm, but the ones attacking them were all at the Emperor realm. How could they resist? There was no way to resist. At this moment, the Star Lord suddenly said, "Sir, I am willing to surrender." Surrender. Surrender. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and looked at the Star Lord. Even perfected Master Chu and the rest were in disbelief. Obviously, they did not expect the Star Lord to choose to surrender. At this moment, the Star Lord suddenly appeared in front of the little girl. He knelt down on one knee. "I am willing to pledge my loyalty to you, sir." Everyone present. Zhou Xian also did not expect the Star Lord to surrender directly and kneel down to surrender. What was he playing at? Not far away, the little girl walked in front of the Star Lord. Too late. As soon as her voice fell, the Star Lord's face changed instantly. He retreated frantically and then, under everyone's shocked gaze, he escaped just like that. An old man beside the little girl wanted to give chase, but the little girl shook her head. No need. Following the Star Lord's escape, the morale of the Great Wall instantly fell to the bottom. How could they fight? The dignified Star Lord actually fled just like that. How could they fight? Soon more and more people fled. However, the little girl did not let these people go. Instead she chose to kill them all. Not far away, Yi Xian said in a low voice, "She wants to cleanse." Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Leaving these people alive is an unstable factor and they are not easy to tame. Killing them directly is more beneficial to the rule of the god nation. This little girl is really ruthless." Little girl? Zhao Mu's expression was quite strange. In the void, after the Star Lord fled, the Monster King also immediately turned and left. At the same time, the countless monster army retreated like the tide. At this time, a voice rang out in the sky, "Retreat." The Divine Dao Army's commander Yi Zhantian. As soon as Yi Zhantian's voice fell, all the Divine Dao Army retreated. The little girl looked at the commander of the guards not far away. "Chase them, don't leave any alive." The commander bowed respectfully, then led the guards in pursuit of the Divine Dao Lords. The rest of the God Nation powerhouses also chased after those who fled. Kill them all. In the void, Tang Yan also left with the Tang clan powerhouses. Only Perfected Chu and the Southern Sect Martial Master were left. The two looked at each other, then turned and left. After using all their trump cards, they could see no hope. They could not stop this God Nation. Forcibly resisting now would only be suicide. Beside Yi Xian, Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. The Southern Sect Martial Master told her to leave. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Miss Zhao, are you going to leave just like that?" Zhao Mu did not answer. Yi Xian said again, "Will you miss me?" Zhao Mu turned and looked coldly at Yi Xian, then made a throat-slitting gesture. Yi Xian. Soon Zhao Mu left, but before she left behind a bottle of medicine for healing. Yi Xian looked at the medicine in his hand and smiled. At this time his expression suddenly changed and he turned around. In front of him stood a little girl. It was the Divine Master of God Nation. The little girl looked at Yi Xian but did not say anything. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "Can you return the pagoda to me?" The little girl looked at the World Prison Pagoda in her palm, then looked at Yi Xian. "You gave it to me." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I regret it." The little girl looked at Yi Xian for a long time, then finally she pointed with a finger and the World Prison Pagoda returned to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned. She really returned it? The little girl was expressionless. "It has already recognized you as its master. I do not accept second-hand goods." Yi Xian. The World Prison Pagoda suddenly shook violently. It felt a great humiliation. Yi Xian hurriedly grabbed the World Prison Pagoda. "Calm down or you will be beaten." The World Prison Pagoda was still unwilling. It wanted to charge at the little girl, but Yi Xian held it tightly. The little girl suddenly said, "Is it going to beat me?" Yi Xian looked at the little girl. She said, "Let it come." Yi Xian loosened his grip, but the World Prison Pagoda did not charge over. It floated in front of Yi Xian, trembling. At this time Xiao Linger's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "It wants you to hold it back." Yi Xian. Soon the World Prison Pagoda was thrown back into Yi Xian's body. This fellow was really too embarrassing. At this time the little girl suddenly said, "Your sword." Yi Xian looked at the little girl. "My sword?" The little girl nodded. "Take a look." Yi Xian opened his palm, and the Executing Heaven sword appeared in his hand. He released his hand and the Executing Heaven sword flew in front of the little girl. The little girl sized up the Executing Heaven sword, then said, "Sharp." The Executing Heaven sword trembled slightly as if in reply. The little girl took out the sword at her waist, and at this time the Executing Heaven sword returned to Yi Xian. The little girl frowned slightly. The Executing Heaven sword did not seem to like her sword. The little girl looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand. The Executing Heaven sword trembled, then returned to Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian looked at the little girl. It means that everything in the past is in the past. It does not want to recall the past. At this point he looked at the Executing Heaven sword in his hand. This was a sword with a story. The little girl nodded slightly and did not say anything else. At this time Yi Xian suddenly said, "Can you show me your sword?" The little girl loosened her grip, and the sword in her hand flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian sized up the sword in his hand. It looked very ordinary, but it contained a mysterious power. Yi Xian looked at the little girl and asked, "What sword is this?" The little girl shook her head. "It came to my side when I was born." Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. What was this? Did this sword come by itself? Yi Xian carefully sized up the sword in his hand and then said, "Are you interested in following me?" The little girl. At this time, the sword in his hand suddenly flew away, and it flew in front of the little girl, trembling slightly. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. "It said that you are thick-skinned." Yi Xian. At this time the little girl turned to leave, but she soon stopped and looked at Yi Xian. "You are the city lord of Divine Martial City?" Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, 3 days later my people will enter Divine Martial City to take over. At that time you can choose to accept or reject. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is there no room for negotiation?" The little girl shook her head. "No." Yi Xian nodded. "Then send someone powerful or I won't be able to kill to my heart's content." The little girl said softly, "As you wish." After saying that she disappeared not far away. At this time, a woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian looked at Yi Xian and blinked. "Your sword, can I see it too?" Yi Xian shook his head decisively. "No." Zhou Xian said angrily. "Why?" Yi Xian was expressionless. "If I show it to you, will you return it?" After saying that he turned to leave. Zhou Xian suddenly blocked in front of Yi Xian, and she looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, "Swordsman, tell me, as long as I become as shameless as you, will I get a lot of treasures?" Yi Xian. Chapter 619. Yi Xian ignored the woman. She was too annoying. However, Zhou Xian kept chasing him. "Swordsman, compensate me with a knife." "I don't even have a knife to use." Yi Xian stopped. "You want to kill me?" Zhou Xian said seriously. "I don't want to kill you now." Yi Xian asked, "Why?" Zhou Xian thought about it and said, "I can't kill you." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. "So if you could kill me you would, wouldn't you?" Zhou Xian glanced at Yi Xian. "Don't you think you deserve a beating?" Yi Xian shook his head. He ignored the woman and turned to leave. This woman was too powerful. Yi Xian moved quickly and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. At this time the woman's voice came from behind. "You can't run. I'm going to Shenwu City to find you." Yi Xian. As the Great Wall's Order Alliance, Monster Clan and Tang Clan fled, the Kingdom of God's army marched straight in. It was worth mentioning that the Kingdom of God's army didn't massacre or even rob along the way. However, every city and sect had a new master. This time the Kingdom of God didn't wipe them out. As long as they surrendered, they were not killed. As for those who resisted, there was basically no resistance because the Kingdom of God was too powerful. So powerful that it made people despair. After the Kingdom of God took over many places, they immediately began to reform. At the same time, powerful forces from the Kingdom of God appeared in the 3 desolate worlds. In the Kingdom of God, there were 36 sects and 10 aristocratic families. The top ones were the Confucian Institution, the Military School, and the School of Vertical and Horizontal. The Confucian Institution, the Military School, and the School of Vertical and Horizontal had their own orthodoxies. In the Kingdom of God they were very powerful, but even they had to submit to the God Lord of the Kingdom of God. Many disciples of these 3 schools were also serving the kingdom. Now the Kingdom of God was in conflict, but it was also very united. In particular, the dispatch of troops this time was unanimously agreed by all the forces in the Kingdom of God. Many old monsters from the Divine Kingdom had yet to appear. Even though the Divine Nation had entered 3 deserted worlds, the Order Alliance, the Tang Clan, and the Demon Clan had not been completely destroyed. However, they had sent their armies to fight. Everyone knew that the Chaosverse was truly going to be unified. After Yi Xian left the Great Wall, he directly rode his sword to Ascending Heaven City. Some debts needed to be settled. When he arrived at Heaven Ascension City, there was not a single soul in the city. All of them escaped? Yi Xian frowned. When he entered the city, it was completely empty. There was nothing at all. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. His spiritual consciousness swept across the entire city and soon he disappeared from the spot. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived in front of a large hall where a person was sitting. Star Lord. Yi Xian looked at the Star Lord. "Waiting for me?" The Star Lord nodded. He got up and walked not far from Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and said, "Yi Xian, I have to say, you are indeed outstanding." Yi Xian nodded. "After knowing you for so long, you finally said something sensible." The Star Lord shook his head. "I have to say, coveting this treasure of yours was indeed my biggest mistake. However, I had no other choice. Yi Xian took out a divine crystal and swallowed it. Are you sure you want to talk? I am a straightforward person and I will not beat around the bush. Right now I have not fully recovered. The Star Lord smiled. Feel free to swallow it. If I am still afraid of fighting you, then I really have lived all these years in vain. Yi Xian nodded. Then I won't be polite. With that he took out another pile of divine crystals and began to swallow. At this time an old man holding a sword suddenly appeared not far away. A divine nation expert. Obviously this divine nation did not intend to let the Star Lord go. Yi Xian looked at the old man holding the sword. Senior, can you let me fight him? If I die, oh no, if I can't win, can you make your move? The old man looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. He looked at the Star Lord and the latter smiled. Sir, since I can't run away, how about you let me fight him? The old man retreated to the side. Obviously he agreed. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian. Do you know how long I have been in the Tendo realm? Yi Xian shook his head. The Star Lord said, 300 years. I have been trapped in the Tendo realm for 300 years. Yi Xian asked, so you are eyeing my treasure? The Star Lord said softly, Yi Xian, tell me the truth. The reason why you are so monstrous is because of that treasure, right? Yi Xian was a little unhappy. Could it be that other than this treasure I, Yi Xian, am useless? The Star Lord laughed. I forgot. You still have a very strong point, which is your thick skin. Shameless enough, huh? Yi Xian said calmly. Star Lord, even if you get that treasure you can't improve. The Star Lord asked, why? Yi Xian said, because this treasure can't help people improve, at least not now. That's right, I obtained some opportunities because of this treasure. But that's because I, Yi Xian, have a strong and unreasonable sword, Immortal sister. Otherwise I would have died many times. These were his heartfelt words. If it wasn't for the plain-dressed woman he would have died many times. But he still did not understand why the plain-dressed woman was so good to him. Was it because he was too handsome? Thinking of this, Yi Xian blushed. Was he too narcissistic? At this moment the Star Lord suddenly asked, the sword Immortal sister you mentioned is the person behind you? Yi Xian nodded, yes. The Star Lord said softly, so strong that she is unreasonable. Yi Xian smiled, Star Lord, we can start. At this moment he had completely recovered. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. Let me see how monstrous you are after becoming a transcendent sword saint. As his voice fell he slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force quietly gathered in his fist. Yi Xian opened his palm and the executing heaven sword appeared in his palm. The next moment, the power of the earth began to gather towards him at an extremely fast speed. Almost in an instant, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins within a radius of tens of thousands of miles were all absorbed by him. Not far away the old man holding the sword glanced at Yi Xian. Great Dao Law. The endless Great Dao Law began to gather towards Yi Xian, and in Yi Xian's hand, the executing heaven sword began to vibrate violently. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian and the next moment he suddenly disappeared. Boom! A powerful force suddenly swept towards Yi Xian. The force was so strong that it directly caused the entire city to collapse inch by inch. Yi Xian looked in front of him and said softly, this sword is for you on behalf of Senior Wu Wen and Senior Yu. As his voice fell he suddenly leaped forward and slashed with the sword in both hands. Behind him, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins gathered into his body like a golden dragon, and then poured out along his executing heaven sword. The sword fell. Boom! A silhouette suddenly flew out. It was Yi Xian. Not far away the old man shook his head. The difference in cultivation level was too great. At this moment his expression suddenly changed. He looked at the position where the Star Lord was standing not far away, and the space there suddenly began to strangely slice. Chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi. A series of densely packed cutting sounds rang out. Spatial laceration. The sword-hugging elder narrowed his eyes. This spatial laceration was not an external laceration, but a laceration of spatial attributes. This was extremely terrifying. At that moment, the elder suddenly turned his head to look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. There, a sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew towards Confucius. The next moment the sword pointed at where the planet lord was. Buzz! A sword cry suddenly shook the heavens and earth. Soul-suppressing sword. Soul-splitting sword. The elder with the sword immediately turned his head to look at the position of the Star Lord. There the space was trembling. Soon the space returned to normal. At this moment the Star Lord appeared in front of Zhou Xian and the elder. At this moment the Star Lord's face was abnormally pale. Not only that, there were more than 10 sword scars around his body. But he was still alive. In the distance Zhou Xian's expression darkened. At this time Soul's voice sounded in his mind. Young lord, his soul is too strong, I can't separate it. Zhou Xian nodded. Don't worry, leave the rest to me. As he spoke, he looked at the Star Lord not far away. At this moment the Star Lord's eyes were slightly closed. His soul would leave his body from time to time, but it would quickly return to his body. In the end his soul returned to normal. The Star Lord opened his eyes and looked at Zhou Xian. That sword of yours is really strange. Zhou Xian smiled. Unfortunately, it's useless against you. The Star Lord shook his head. If your realm was a little higher, I wouldn't be able to withstand it. As he spoke, he slowly walked towards Zhou Xian. If you don't have any other trump cards, then you might die. Zhou Xian smiled. I still have one trump card. The Star Lord nodded. Let's try. Zhou Xian smiled slightly. The next moment he took a step forward and a red glow swept out from his body. Bloodline power. In fact, he didn't really want to use this bloodline power, but at this moment he had no choice. If he didn't use the bloodline power, he couldn't kill this Star Lord. As for the after effects of this bloodline power, he didn't care so much. Now he just wanted to kill the person in front of him. As the bloodline power was activated, rays of red light constantly vibrated out from his body. At the same time, the power of the surrounding earth veins once again gathered towards him. Not only that, this time he directly used the Dragon Soul Force and Dragon Power. At this moment his aura skyrocketed to an extremely terrifying level. Especially the bloodline power, the power of this bloodline power was too terrifying. In addition, he was also madly absorbing the surrounding power of space. And the surrounding space began to squeeze towards the Star Lord layer by layer. The Star Lord narrowed his eyes, slowly clenching his fists. Soon, a powerful aura constantly vibrated out from his body, and the surrounding space rippled, extremely terrifying. Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared. A ray of red sword light flashed across the field. Not far away, the Star Lord also suddenly disappeared. There was a moment of silence. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded, following which the entire ascending heaven city began to collapse and be annihilated. At this time, countless flying swords suddenly appeared in the field, crisscrossing, and at the same time the surrounding space began to cut. Just like this, it continued for about 15 minutes before the surroundings gradually calmed down. Zhou Xian stood on the spot, blood constantly flowing out from the corner of his mouth, but very quickly the blood was absorbed by him. And not far away, the Star Lord's physical body had already been destroyed. But his soul was still there. The Star Lord looked at Zhou Xian and said softly, "Spending such a great price just to destroy my physical body? Then do you know that I only need half a quarter of an hour to condense a new physical body?" At this time, not far away, Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, a sword light slashed over. Soul suppressing sword plus soul setting sword. The Star Lord's face instantly changed. At this moment he knew why Zhou Xian wanted to destroy his physical body at all costs. This sword plus this sword skill, his soul could not block it at all. The Star Lord suddenly laughed out loud. "Good one, Zhou Xian." As his voice fell, his soul suddenly exploded. Rumble. Zhou Xian was instantly sent flying thousands of feet away and finally heavily smashed onto the ground. But very quickly Zhou Xian stood up. After the Star Lord's soul self-destructed, he immediately looked at the sword-hugging elder not far away, and then he walked towards the sword-hugging elder with his sword. Killing intent. At this moment he wanted to kill someone. The sword-hugging elder looked at Zhou Xian and said indifferently, "You better calm down." Zhou Xian suddenly roared, "I also want to calm down, but I can't control myself." Ah! As his voice fell, he directly rushed towards the sword-hugging elder. "Pissed, too tired. I want to take a leave. I want to take 2 days to not write and sleep until I wake up naturally. Is there anyone who can provide for me? Just provide meals." Chapter 620. The old man had an emotionless expression on his face as he watched Zhou Xian charge towards him. Needless to say, Zhou Xian really was very strong because he was able to kill a Star Lord. However, he wasn't someone that a Star-Lord could compare to. He wasn't just a true emperor, he was an extraordinary sword saint as well. Regardless of whether it was in terms of cultivation or the sword Dao, he crushed Yi Xian. At this moment Yi Xian wanted to stop as well. He really wanted to stop, but his body wasn't under his control. Or it should be said that the killing intent in his mind had suppressed his reason. His bloodline would affect his mind and it would affect him greatly. He wasn't able to control himself at all. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive in front of the old man, and the old man suddenly attacked. A sword howl tore through the air and then a ray of light flashed. It was an extremely swift attack. Not too far away. Bang! Yi Xian swiftly drew his sword and slashed as well. But it only took a moment for his figure to be blasted flying along with his sword, and he flew over 1 kilometer away. On the ground, Yi Xian's body twitched for a while. However, he slowly stood up and walked towards the old man holding the sword. He walked very slowly, but the killing intent he emanated didn't weaken at all, and it grew stronger instead. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly while killing intent arose within them. The sword in his hand started to tremble and emanated a light sword howl. Suddenly, a little girl appeared in front of the old man. It was Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian bowed slightly to the old man. "Greetings, Grandpa Xianxia." The old man called Xianxia glanced at Zhou Xian, and then his expression gradually eased up. "It's you." Zhou Xian grinned. "Grandpa Xiang, give him to me, all right?" Xianxia gazed at Yi Xian. "Him?" Zhou Xian nodded. "Yes." Xianxia shook his head. "He's dangerous." Zhou Xian spoke seriously. "He's crippled now, so he's not a match for me at all." When she spoke up to this point, she hesitated for a moment and said, "He stole my saber in the past. I want to take revenge on him." Xianxia looked at Zhou Xian and said, "If you didn't have those evil thoughts, you would have been on the divine list long ago." Zhou Xian blinked. "Haven't I done it yet?" Xianxia was speechless. "Don't you know it yourself?" Zhou Xian said in a low voice. "I thought I was the one." Xianxia. At this time Zhou Xian said again, "It doesn't matter if you go or not. In this god nation, who doesn't know of me, heroine Zhua?" Xianxia smiled. "I still have things to do, so I won't talk nonsense with you. Remember, this person is dangerous. Be careful. It's best to cripple him first." With that, he turned and disappeared into the horizon. Zhou Xian quickly said, "Grandpa Xiang, don't you want his black Xiaotao?" A voice came from the distant horizon. "I'm a swordsman. My sword is enough. Why do I need anything else?" Below, Zhou Xian looked at the horizon and softly said, "Thank goodness I'm not a swordsman." With that, she turned and looked at Yi Xian not far away. At this moment, Yi Xian had already walked a few dozen feet in front of her. Looking at Yi Xian, Zhou Xian smiled. The next moment she stepped forward and punched Yi Xian's face. Bang! Yi Xian instantly fell to the ground. At the same time his face swelled up. Zhou Xian grabbed Yi Xian's foot and walked into the distance. Soon she dragged Yi Xian and disappeared at the end of the horizon. At the end of the horizon, Zhou Xian's strange laughter could be heard from time to time. Order City. At the city gate, a little girl stood quietly. This person was God Nation's sovereign. Behind the little girl were many God Nation's powerhouses. Looking at the Order City, the little girl said softly, "We'll settle here for the time being." At this time Nangongwan suddenly said, "Your Majesty, the Order Alliance and Tang clan have fled to the full sky sea. There's no movement from the monster race and there's no movement from God Marshal City." The little girl said softly, "Send people to hunt them down. We must kill them all." Nangongwan wanted to say something but stopped. The little girl said, "Speak your mind." Nangongwan bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, we have occupied 3 deserted worlds. Now is not the time to kill." The little girl said, "Continue." Nangongwan said, "We need to win the hearts of the people. If we continue to suppress them with iron blood, many people will feel uneasy, especially the forces from the small worlds. Everyone will feel insecure. This is not our original intention. Of course, we cannot let the stubborn forces like the Order Alliance go unchecked. However, if they are willing to surrender, we can let bygones be bygones. Only then will many people not resist stubbornly." The little girl was silent. Nangongwan said again, "Your Majesty, conquering the world is easy, but governing it is difficult, especially when the chaotic universe is so vast. Therefore we must use both carrot and stick. We must use iron blood, but we must also be merciful. The little girl nodded. Yes. Nan Gongwan relaxed. Then I will go and do it. Speaking of this, she seemed to have thought of something and said, should we send troops to suppress God Marshal City? The little girl shook her head. I will go myself. Saying this, she turned to look at the horizon. I once heard from my master that the patriarch of the sword sect is an incredible person. I want to see him. Nan Gongwan nodded. Understood. Saying this, she quietly retreated. The little girl suddenly said, have Elder Lu of the Confucian Institution, Elder Han of the military school, and Elder Wang of the School of Vertical and Horizontal come see me. Behind her, a man quietly retreated. The little girl walked into the city. The streets were deserted. Although there were people around, they were all hiding. The little girl walked to the city lord's palace. At this moment, the entire place was deserted. There was not a single person. The little girl walked to a stone table and sat down. Suddenly, 3 old men appeared in front of her. These 3 were Master Lu Fu of the Confucian Institution, Han Yuzi of the military school, and Wang Jingji of the School of Vertical and Horizontal. The 3 bowed to the little girl. After the 3 bowed, the little girl bowed back. This was respect. The little girl sat down and gestured for them to sit. The 3 old men sat down. The little girl softly said, speak. Master Lu Fu softly said, we want to establish our orthodoxy in various places. The little girl said, the world is very large, and it is easy for it to fall into chaos. Do you understand what I mean? Master Lu Fu smiled. Of course. Rest assured, we are like this in the divine kingdom and we will do the same here. We will not allow this world to fall into chaos again. The little girl looked at Master Lu Fu. First there is a country, then there is a home. No matter how you preach, you must remember this. Saying this, she stood up and left. Where they stood, the 3 looked at each other and smiled. Master Lu Fu suddenly whispered, although this god lord of ours is young, her heart is not small. Han Yuzi smiled. Among the god lords of our divine kingdom, which one is a simple character? Wang Jingji faintly smiled. In truth, this isn't a bad thing. Master Lu Fu nodded. If a god lord isn't strong enough, the primal chaos universe will instantly fall into chaos. Wang Jingji and Han Yuzi nodded. If this god lord isn't monstrous enough, it can be said that the divine kingdom will instantly fall apart. Once that happens, the entire primal chaos universe will fall into endless chaos. At this time, a guard suddenly appeared in front of the 3. The guard bowed slightly. His Majesty said that we still have an enemy we haven't dealt with. Hearing this, the 3's expressions became solemn. There is an even stronger enemy that has yet to be dealt with. Somewhere in a dense forest, Zhou Xian dragged Yi Xian slowly through the forest. Today Zhou Xian was especially happy. The smile on her face was like a blooming flower. She finally caught this shameless swordsman. Zhou Xian dragged Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she arrived in front of a pool of water. She placed Yi Xian on the ground and began to take off Yi Xian's clothes. Chapter 621. Where's the treasure? Zhou Xian had stripped Yi Xian naked, but she still could not find Yi Xian's treasure. Looking at the naked Yi Xian in front of her, Zhou Xian knitted her eyebrows tightly. Somewhat displeased, she lowered her head to look at Yi Xian. At the moment, Yi Xian seemed to have fallen into a coma. Zhou Xian kicked Yi Xian's butt lightly. Shameless swordsman, where's your treasure? Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Yi Xian had no reaction, Zhou Xian kicked him again. However, there was still no reaction. Zhou Xian frowned slightly. She squatted down and patted Yi Xian's face lightly. Shameless swordsman, wake up. However, Yi Xian still did not move. Zhou Xian said softly, he's probably injured. She pondered for a moment before adding, looks like I'll have to treat his injuries first. Treat his injuries. Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian away. About half an hour later, Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian to a mountain range. There was a sect from God Nation on this mountain range. The Medicine King sect. The Medicine King sect was not the most powerful force in God Nation. However, this sect was a little special. This was because this sect specialized in refining elixirs. These elixirs were good stuff. They could be used to treat injuries, nourish the soul and nourish the body. Better elixirs could even help a person improve. Some special elixirs could even change a person's physique and achieve the effect of marrow cleansing. Because of this, the Medicine King sect had a special status in God Nation. There were too many powerful forces that needed to purchase elixirs from them. In addition, the sect leader of the Medicine King sect held a position in the God Nation's palace. Therefore, although the Medicine King sect's combat power was not strong, its influence was huge. Most people did not dare to provoke them. Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian towards the top of the mountain. Along the way many women passed by. However, when they saw Yi Xian, their faces blushed and they hurriedly walked away. Soon the Medicine King sect was shaken. The disciples of the Medicine King sect were mostly female. Because of this, Zhou Xian had brought along a naked Yi Xian and strutted around the mountain, causing quite a stir. At this moment, a woman suddenly walked in front of Zhou Xian. She glanced at Zhou Xian and was a little displeased. "Heroine Zhou, who is this person you brought along?" Zhou Xian said, "A shameless swordsman." The woman glanced at Yi Xian and blushed. "You're a swordsman? Then why didn't you help him get dressed?" Zhou Xian shook her head. "Troublesome." After that she continued to drag Yi Xian up the mountain. As if she had thought of something, she turned to look at the woman. "Is Lunatic Kai here?" The woman replied, "Senior Sister Kai is planting spirit herbs at the top of the mountain." Zhou Xian nodded and dragged Yi Xian up the mountain. At this moment the woman followed beside Zhou Xian. "If you don't help him get dressed, he'll be so embarrassed when he wakes up." Zhou Xian said seriously, "He's very thick-skinned. He won't care at all." The woman was speechless. At this moment Zhou Xian added, "I only know how to strip." The woman was speechless. After a while Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian to the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain many people were building a palace. On the other side, a woman was planting spirit herbs in a courtyard. The woman looked to be in her 20s and wore a simple cotton dress. She had a small scythe hanging from her waist and was currently using a small hoe to dig a hole. Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian behind the woman and said, "Lunatic Kai, help me save this person." The woman did not even turn her head. "No." Zhou Xian was expressionless. "This person has a lot of treasures on him." The woman turned around. When she saw Yi Xian she was slightly stunned. "This is the Shenwu City Lord Yi Xian?" Zhou Xian looked at Lunatic Kai in surprise. "You know him?" Lunatic Kai walked in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. "I heard that he has a fifth-dimensional treasure on him." Zhou Xian quickly nodded. Yes, he has a lot of treasures on him. However, I don't know where he hid them. I searched for a long time but couldn't find him." Lunatic Kai squatted in front of Yi Xian and placed her right hand on Yi Xian's abdomen. After a while she said softly, "His internal organs are damaged and the blood vessels in his body are still boiling. Bury him." Zhou Xian hesitated and said, "I think he can still be saved. Let's try." Lunatic Kai looked at Zhou Xian. "I need money to save him." Zhou Xian hurriedly pointed at Yi Xian. "He doesn't have anything but money. After saving him we'll divide him." Zhou Xian thought for a while and said, "Okay." After saying that she took out a white jade bottle and poured out a thumb-sized medicinal pill. The medicinal pill was pure white and emitted a sweet fragrance. Lunatic Kai fed the medicinal pill to Yi Xian. Soon, a light green energy suddenly spread out from Yi Xian's body. After a while, Yi Xian's body started to tremble. Zhou Xian quickly asked, "What's wrong?" Lunatic Kai touched Yi Xian's body and said, "His blood swallowed my medicinal pill." Zhou Xian replied with an "oh," and said, "Continue feeding." Lunatic Kai looked at Zhou Xian. "It's very expensive." Zhou Xian said seriously, "He's the city lord of Shenwu City. Do you think he lacks money? Moreover, he has a lot of treasures on him." Lunatic Kai thought for a moment and continued feeding Yi Xian. Just like that, around an hour later, Yi Xian's injuries started to slowly recover. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and they were completely blood red. Zhou Xian's eyelids twitched when she saw this. How terrifying! Meanwhile, Lunatic Kai suddenly rubbed a silver needle between Yi Xian's brows. Zhou Xian looked at Lunatic Kai. "What are you doing?" Lunatic Kai said in a low voice. "His killing intent is too strong. It's because of his bloodline. This needle of mine has temporarily suppressed his bloodline." Zhou Xian asked, "Can he wake up?" Lunatic Kai said softly, "It's up to him." Right at this moment Xiaoling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Zhou Xian and Lunatic Noodle were stunned when they saw Xiaoling. Xiaoling glanced at the two women and then looked at Yi Xian. When Yi Xian was injured, the prison pagoda was affected and closed, so she couldn't come out at all. But now, after Lunatic Kai fed Yi Xian a pill, Yi Xian's body recovered a little, and the prison pagoda was opened again. Lunatic Kai suddenly said, "She's the spirit of the source." The spirit of the source. Swijing's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she looked at Xiaoling with surprise. She really is the spirit of the source. Xiaoling glanced at the two women and her face was expressionless. "You're actually humans. How rare." The two women were speechless. Xiaoling looked at Yi Xian, and then she took out many spirit fruits to feed Yi Xian. Seeing these spirit fruits, Lunatic Kai's eyes lit up. Holy spirit fruit, mystical spirit grass, red dragon fruit. Xiaoling ignored the two women and continued to feed Yi Xian's spirit fruits. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and it quickly trembled as if it was angry. Xiaoling glanced at the prison pagoda. "He didn't do it on purpose, so why are you angry?" The prison pagoda trembled as if it was saying something. Xiaoling ignored it and she continued to feed Yi Xian's spirit fruits. At the side, Swijing and Lunatic Kai's eyes fell on the prison pagoda. A fifth-dimensional treasure. Swijing's eyes lit up and Lunatic Kai was a little curious. Regarding this fifth-dimensional treasure, many people in the Divine Nation also knew about it. One had to know that this treasure was not only ranked first here, it was also ranked first in the entire Divine Nation. In God Nation there was also a God weapon list which was created by the Heavenly Secret Sect, and the number one treasure was this fifth-dimensional treasure. This treasure surpassed countless treasures in God Nation. But now there were two more treasures on this God weapon list. Executing Heaven's Sword. And this Executing Heaven's Sword was ranked third. In other words, on the God weapon list, Yi Xian alone occupied two treasures. At this moment, Swijing suddenly said, "Why don't you follow me?" Prison pagoda. Xiaoling looked at Swijing. "It won't follow you." Swijing was a little confused. "Why?" Xiaoling said, "Because it's afraid of death." Prison pagoda. Swijing blinked her eyes. At this time the red in Yi Xian's eyes gradually receded, and his consciousness also slowly recovered. After a while Yi Xian completely recovered his consciousness, and he looked at Xiaoling softly saying, "Not dead." Beside him Swijing hurriedly said, "Shameless swordsman, it was me who saved you." Lunatic Kai said, "Me too." Yi Xian slowly sat up and at this time his lower body felt cold. He looked down and was immediately stunned. "Not wearing anything?" Yi Xian looked at Swijing. "Where are my clothes?" Swijing hurriedly shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian. At this time Swijing suddenly said, "Swordsman, I saved you, how are you going to repay me?" Yi Xian took out a set of clothes and put it on, then looked at Swijing. "Why don't I repay you with my body?" Swijing glared at Yi Xian. "Shameless swordsman, be a man. How can you be so shameless? I'm your savior, you know. If not for me you would have been killed by Grandpa Xiangqing." Yi Xian said seriously, "Thank you." These words were from the bottom of her heart. He knew that if not for this woman in front of him he might really have died. With that said, Yi Xian opened his palm and a storage ring appeared in his hand. He handed the storage ring to Swijing. "There are 5 million divinity crystals in there, is that enough?" Swijing took a look at the storage ring. Then she looked at the prison tower not far away. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "I can't give it to you. It's true. If it's with you it might even harm you." Lunatic Kai also said, "He's right." Swijing thought for a moment then said, "Then pay me back with a saber." "I don't have a saber to use anymore." Yi Xian said, 5 million divinity crystals, can I buy a Dao realm saber?" Swijing nodded, "Yes. But I can only buy a normal one. I want a very very good one, is that okay?" Yi Xian asked, "Where can I find one?" Swijing hurriedly said, "I know a place with a saber on the divine weapon list, I've liked it for a long time. Come, I'll take you to steal it." With that said she grabbed Yi Xian and ran. Lunatic Kai. P.S. I slept for an entire afternoon yesterday. It felt very comfortable. When I woke up this morning I finally didn't feel dizzy and sore. Many of the authors you know are slow to update. In fact, most of the reasons are because they can't handle the intense writing. Because we are all slowly growing up and we no longer have the energy we had when we were young. Sometimes, after writing for an entire day, we feel like our heads don't belong to us anymore. Very few people would be able to experience such a feeling. I am grateful to all the readers who have supported me along the way. I will continue to work hard and update, and I will try to update as much as possible. Keep updating and steadily update every month. Are there any readers with questions? If there are, I have a physical book here, we can chat privately. Chapter 622. Feel. Yi Xian was at a loss for words. Suddenly Zhou Xian stopped and turned to look at Lunatic Kai. Do you want to go with me? Lunatic Kai shook his head and looked at Yi Xian. I fed you 16 elixirs just now. That's exactly 5 million divinity crystals. Yi Xian jumped to his feet. 5 million divinity crystals? Are you sure? Lunatic Kai said calmly, those are immortal grade elixirs. Do you know what an immortal grade elixir is? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I don't think it's that expensive. Lunatic Kai sneered. Not that expensive? Let me tell you, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't sell it to you even if you offered 10 million. Yi Xian looked at Zhou Xian, who nodded. That elixir is very expensive. Yi Xian nodded and pointed his finger. The spatial ring with 5 million divinity crystals flew into Lunatic Kai's hand. Lunatic Kai glanced at Yi Xian. Don't feel uncomfortable. Go ask around for the price of the Holy Spirit elixir. Then she turned and left. At this time Xiaoling suddenly shouted angrily, what kind of lousy elixir is this? Is it expensive? She waved her hand and a large pile of spiritual fruits appeared in front of Lunatic Kai. Lunatic Kai's eyelids twitched when he saw the pile of spiritual fruits. These are all supreme-grade spiritual fruits. If they are used to make elixirs, the quality of the elixirs will be greatly improved. At this time, Yi Xian walked up to Xiaolinger and rubbed Xiaolinger's little head. You can't say that. Xiaolinger looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. No matter what elixir it is, it saved my life. We should remember and be grateful to those who help us, not bite the hand that feeds us. Do you understand? Xiaolinger blinked and nodded. I don't understand. Yi Xian was speechless. I don't understand why you're nodding. He gently rubbed Xiaolinger's little head, then looked at Lunatic Kai. Miss, I will remember your kindness for saving my life. With that he pointed at the spirit fruits on the ground. A small token of my appreciation, please accept it. Lunatic Kai glanced at Yi Xian and kept the spiritual fruits. You and I are even. Yi Xian nodded and left with Zhou Xian. On the way Zhou Xian suddenly said, Swordsman, Lunatic Kai is still a good person. Yi Xian nodded. I'm not angry. Zhou Xian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. She and you saved my life. Not to mention 5 million, even 50 million wouldn't be too much. Your life-saving grace is greater than the heavens. Zhou Xian said seriously, really? Yi Xian nodded. Zhou Xian hurriedly said, then you must help me get that saber. Yi Xian said seriously, are you really going to steal it? Zhou Xian shook her head. It's not stealing, it's taking. Yi Xian was speechless. Just like that, Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian to the God Nation. The Saber Sect. The Saber Sect was very famous in the God Nation, second only to the Confucian School of Military and School of Vertical and Horizontal. At this moment, there were very few people in the Saber Sect because most of the disciples had gone to the Northern Wasteland realm. There was a new Saber Sect. Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian to an underground place. As soon as they entered, a wave of heat hit them. Yi Xian frowned. What was this place? Zhou Xian continued to bring Yi Xian down. After about an hour, Zhou Xian brought Yi Xian to a fiery red well. Looking at the well, Zhou Xian was a little excited. Look. Yi Xian walked to the fire well and bent down to look. About 5 feet below, there was a fiery red saber floating. The saber was as red as a pool of blood. It was 2 fingers wide and there was a groove on the back of the saber. Inside it, a small red lotus slowly floated from top to bottom. And the entire saber exuded a fiery killing intent. And around the saber there were 4 chains. The 4 chains locked the saber tightly. Good saber. This was Yi Xian's first impression. Beside Yi Xian, Zhou Xian said excitedly, Swordsman, do you know what saber this is? Yi Xian shook his head. Zhou Xian said, this is called the Hellfire Saber. It contains the Hellfire of the Red Lotus, which is ranked 7th on the Spirit ranking. This saber is ranked 5th on the Divine Weapon ranking. It's very powerful. Yi Xian looked at Zhou Xian. He opened his palm and the Executing Heaven sword appeared. Xian asked. Is it better than my sword? Zhou glared at Xian. Are you trying to piss me off on purpose? Xian roared with laughter. The saber below was very strong indeed. If he were to slash it with his sword, he was confident that he could shatter it with a single strike. Up until now, besides the world prison pagoda, he hadn't found anything that could resist the executing heaven sword. Meanwhile, Zhou said, Swordsman, help me cut the chains that lock it. Xian looked at the 4 chains and hesitated for a moment before he said, This saber belongs to your saber sect, right? Zhou nodded. Yes, it belongs to my saber sect. Xian asked, Then why did they lock it? Zhou said angrily, Who knows? In any case, I'm going to let it out. Xian was slightly hesitant. Miss Sua, I think that you should ask the seniors of your saber sect. Because there's definitely a reason why they locked it there. Zhou blinked and said, They have nothing better to do. Swordsman, help me cut those chains and I'll take responsibility for everything. Xian was speechless. Zhou continued, If you're unwilling, then let me use your sword. Because the chains below are protected by a formation, and ordinary weapons aren't able to harm it at all. Xian thought for a moment and then he looked down the well. In the next moment, a ray of light shot into the well, and it didn't take long for the chains that locked the karmic flame blade to suddenly transform into countless pieces. Bang! The karmic flame blade charged out of the well along with a wave of flames. It didn't stop there and it continued charging towards the ground. Zhou hurriedly said, Stop it. Xian opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot into the air. It didn't take long for the executing heaven sword to block the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade didn't stop there, and it slashed towards the executing heaven sword instead. Xian shook his head. Isn't the karmic flame blade looking for trouble? As expected, the karmic flame blade had just slashed towards the executing heaven sword when it was blasted away. At this moment there were already cracks on the karmic flame blade. Zhou's expression changed when she saw this and she hurriedly said, Don't hurt it. As she spoke, she leaped up and arrived in front of the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade was trembling violently in fear. The executing heaven sword floated to Zhou's side, and she hurriedly grabbed it. Don't be angry. Let me talk to it. As she spoke, she flew over to the karmic flame blade and grabbed it. But in the next moment her right hand loosened and her hand was mangled. Zhou was stunned when she witnessed this scene. The karmic flame blade intended to flee, but the executing heaven sword quickly blocked its path. The karmic flame blade was speechless. Xian walked over to Zhou and said in a low voice, It must submit to you so that it won't hurt you. Zhou looked at the karmic flame blade. Will you submit to me? The karmic flame blade trembled violently as if it was furious. Obviously it wasn't willing to submit. Zhou was expressionless. Kill it. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Xian was speechless. The executing heaven sword actually slashed towards the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade instantly trembled in fear when it saw this. In the next moment, it flew over to Zhou and let out a low hum. Zhou was expressionless. Didn't you refuse to follow me? Go fight it one-on-one. The karmic flame blade started to tremble violently. A moment later, Zhou grabbed the karmic flame blade. At this moment the karmic flame blade didn't hurt her. Xian was speechless. Zhou glanced at the blade in her hand with undisguised fondness in her eyes. At this moment the bottom of the well suddenly trembled violently. Xian's expression changed. He bent over to look and saw that the lava in the well was suddenly boiling. At the same time, terrifying heat waves kept spewing out from the ground. Xian's expression darkened. Needless to say, something must have happened. Without hesitation, Xian disappeared on the spot with Zhou. As soon as the two of them arrived on the surface, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble and countless amounts of lava spewed out. Xian looked at Zhou. Zhou's expression was very innocent. It has nothing to do with me, right? Xian said indifferently, What do you think? At this moment an old man suddenly appeared in front of Xian and Zhou. Zhou's expression changed when she saw this old man. She hurriedly retreated behind Xian. The old man looked at Zhou coldly. How did you get that blade out? Zhou lowered her head slightly and didn't speak. The old man said angrily, Do you know what that blade is used for? Jing glanced at the old man and said softly, I don't. The old man said angrily, nonsense. That blade is something that suppresses the earth spirit energy here. If you take it away now, then the earth spirit energy here will erupt completely, and everything in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers will be transformed into ashes. Earth spirit energy? Xian was stunned. He remembered that you had said that the energy of the earth could absorb earth spirit energy. Moreover, the earth spirit energy was much more abundant than the energy of the earth veins. The reason he hadn't absorbed earth spirit energy in the past was because earth spirit energy couldn't be found everywhere. Xian hadn't expected that he would actually encounter it here. Jing, who stood behind Xian, was instantly stunned when she heard the old man. She hadn't expected that the matter would be so serious. Everything in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers will be transformed into ashes. Doesn't that mean that the Saber sect will be destroyed by the energy of the earth veins? Jing was on the verge of crying when she thought up to here. The old man still wanted to say something, but Xian suddenly said, Senior, let me handle this matter. The old man looked at Xian. City Lord Yi, you're not welcome here. He naturally knew Xian. Xian had a certain reputation in God Nation now. Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, I'm also partly responsible for this matter. I, Xian, am not the kind of person who won't take responsibility for what he does. Since this matter is related to me, I'll take responsibility until the end. The old man looked at Xian coldly. How are you going to take responsibility? Xian said in a deep voice, I have an item that can absorb the earth's spirit energy. However, it's extremely dangerous. At this point he sighed softly, no matter how dangerous it is, I can only try. As he spoke, the great Tao Law appeared between his eyebrows. Soon, the earth spirit energy below began to gather towards him. In an instant, Xian was enveloped in magma. Xian was stunned. In the next moment, his face suddenly contorted. So painful. However, he was laughing inside. It's so King comfortable. Jing was stunned when she saw Xian's painful expression. Soon, her tears flowed out and she kept repeating in her heart, I'm sorry. Chapter 623. The old man from the Saber sect was stunned. Xian was willing to sacrifice himself for the Saber sect? He was dumbfounded. Not far away, Xian was frantically absorbing the earth's spiritual power. After the earth's spiritual power was absorbed by him, it was absorbed by the Great Tao Law and gathered in the Great Tao Law. And when the power of the earth passed through his body also benefited greatly. Due to the Great Tao Law, the earth's spiritual power did not cause any harm to his body. The Great Tao Law restrained all energy and power that came from the earth. About 2 hours later, he had absorbed all of the earth string energy. After that, he lay down on the ground, his face twisted in pain. I'm in so much pain. Jing quickly supported him. Are you all right? Her voice was trembling. Xian's body twitched as if he was having an epileptic seizure. Jing quickly looked at the old man, her face full of anxiety. Big Grandpa, save him. The old man glanced at Xian. This kid is a little strange. Jing said angrily, what's strange about him? He saved our Saber sect. Big Grandpa, how can you be so cold-hearted? I won't call you Grandpa anymore. Old man, I'll call you old man. The old man was speechless. He glanced at Xian on the ground and tapped with his finger. A white jade bottle landed in front of Xian. Jing hurriedly opened the white jade bottle and fed Xian all the elixirs inside. After about an hour, Xian slowly opened his eyes. He was a little dazed. Am I still alive? Jing quickly said, yes, you're still alive. Xian took a deep breath. You're still alive. Jing lowered her head slightly. Shameless. Swordsman, I'm sorry. Xian looked at Jing and sighed softly. Why are you being so polite? Isn't it normal for friends to help each other? Jing looked at Xian. Do you see me as a friend? Xian nodded. Yeah. Jing suddenly burst into tears. I just wanted to rob you. I'm really bad. Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly said, little girl, come over here. Jing did not respond. He was still crying. The old man said in a low voice, come here. Jing was a little dissatisfied. I'm still sad. The elder shook his head and sighed. Then he looked at Xian and said, City Lord Yi, as far as I know, His Majesty will personally go to your Shenwu city soon. If you don't return, I'm afraid your Shenwu city will be flattened. Yi Xian's expression changed when he heard this. He had almost forgotten about this. That little girl from the Divine Kingdom said that she wanted Divine Martial City to surrender. Yi Xian immediately stood up and looked at Sujing. Miss Sujing, I have to go back first. See you later. After that, he rode his sword and disappeared into the horizon. Sujing was stunned. He's leaving just like that. Not far away, the old man said in a low voice, "Little girl, stay away from this kid. He doesn't look like a decent person." Sujing looked at the old man with dissatisfaction. "Grandpa, how can you say that about me? You're really too bad." After that, she hugged the karmic fire saber and left. The old man was speechless. In the clouds, Yi Xian rode his sword back to Shenwu City. At this moment, his heart was heavy. That little girl from the Divine Kingdom wanted Shenwu City to surrender. Once it surrendered, the entire Shenwu City would have to listen to her orders. He did not like this. However, he was very clear that the current Shenwu City could not resist that little girl. What should he do? How frustrating. Yi Xian thought for a long time. In the end, he decided to reason with her. He must reason with her. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sped up. More and more forces from the Divine Kingdom entered the three wasteland worlds, and these forces divided the three wasteland worlds. However, there was no massacre. Of course, the interests of many local forces were greatly affected. But now, because of the Divine Kingdom's strength, there was no resistance. As for the Lawful Alliance, the Divine Dao Army, the Tang Clan and the Demon Clan, they all fled to the Sky Sea. The Sky Sea was boundless and had many islands. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. In addition, most of the Divine Kingdom's army was stationed in various places. Therefore, the Lawful Alliance and other forces had not been completely eradicated. Apart from that, there was another anomaly. That was Shenwu City. Currently, this Shenwu City had not surrendered to the Divine Kingdom, and the Divine Kingdom did not send any experts to attack Shenwu City. However, everyone knew that, could Shenwu City continue to maintain its transcendent status? Shenwu City. After Yi Xian returned to Shenwu City, he immediately summoned Xianxia and the others. Inside the main hall, the experts of Wu Yuan and the Sword Sect were all present. Everyone's expression was somewhat solemn. The Divine Kingdom's strength had greatly exceeded their expectations. Under such circumstances, it was simply impossible for Shenwu City to oppose the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Everyone can speak your opinions." Below, a Wu Yuan expert suddenly said, "We can't beat them." Yi Xian smiled. "Indeed, I can't beat him." Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian stood up and said softly, "If you believe me, then let me resolve this matter." Everyone nodded. Towards Yi Xian they had unreserved trust. By then Yi Xian was the only one he could trust. Soon, everyone dispersed, leaving only Yi Xian and Xianxia in the hall. Xianxia walked to Yi Xian's side and said softly, "What do you plan to do?" Yi Xian looked outside the distant hall and said with a smile, "What else can I do?" Xianxia said in a low voice, "The difference between our strength and theirs is too great." Yi Xian nodded, "I know." Xianxia glanced at Yi Xian, "You make the decision." Finished speaking, she turned around and left. Only Yi Xian was left in the hall. Yi Xian stayed in the hall for a full 2 hours, and during these 2 hours no one knew what Yi Xian did. Outside the hall, Yi Xian stood quietly. And at this time, a little girl arrived at Shenwu City's gate. This person was the Divine Kingdom's Divine Lord. The little girl wore a black dress today with a long sword hanging on her waist. Her black hair was tied up with a purple ribbon, looking especially cool. 1,000 feet behind the little girl stood 10 black-clothed people. The 10 black-clothed people wore black gauze masks on their heads and long swords hung on their waists, making it impossible to see their depths. And in front of these 10 people stood a blindfolded man. The man looked to be around 30 years old, wore black clothes and held a sheathed long sword in his hand. In the distance, the little girl walked towards the city. The blindfolded man and the 10 people were about to follow, but the little girl raised her right hand, and the 11 immediately left. It didn't take long for the little girl to arrive in the city. The streets of the city were still very bustling because very few people recognized the little girl. The little girl walked forward slowly, and all along the way people on both sides of the street would look at her from time to time. The little girl ignored everyone's gazes and continued walking forward. Right at this moment, a man suddenly walked in front of the little girl. He looked at the little girl and laughed mischievously. "Little girl, it seems like you have just arrived at the divine martial city?" The little girl nodded. The man's eyes lit up and he hurriedly said, "There are many bad people in Shenwu City. You have to be careful." The little girl nodded. "All right." The man was about to speak when the little girl suddenly said, "It's not easy to live. Let's go." The man was slightly stunned. In the next moment he took a deep look at the little girl and then he hurriedly turned around and left. The little girl said softly, "Investigate. If he's done too many bad things then don't let him live." In the dark some people quietly left. The little girl continued forward and in a short while she arrived at the foot of the Sword Sect's mountain, and there stood a man. This man was Yi Xian. The girl looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian chuckled, "Welcome to the Sword Sect." The little girl looked at Yi Xian. "The lives and deaths of countless people in Shenwu City depend on a single thought of yours." Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he walked in front of the little girl and smiled. "Let's not talk about these unpleasant things for now. Come, I've made a few dishes and we can talk while eating." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand and a jade table appeared in front of them. There were over a dozen dishes on the table. P.S. Explosion on the 15th. When they realized this, many people silently read and silently voted. Very few people came out to talk. Come out and say something. Let me know that I'm not writing a book alone. Otherwise I'll feel so lonely every day. It's good to talk. Chapter 624. The girl didn't refuse. Instead she sat down in front of Yi Xian and glanced at the dishes on the table. "You made this?" Yi Xian nodded. "I made it." The girl nodded. Just as she was about to eat, Xiaoling suddenly appeared next to Yi Xian. She glanced at the girl then at Yi Xian. "I want to eat too." Yi Xian laughed. "All right, let's eat together." Xiaoling grinned then picked up her chopsticks. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Let the guests start first." Xiaoling said, "Oh." She looked at the girl implying, "Hurry up and do it." The girl glanced at Xiaoling. A special essence spirit with limitless possibilities in the future. Xiaoling asked, "Do you mean very powerful?" The girl nodded. Little Ling hurriedly asked, "How powerful will it be?" The girl looked at Xiaoling. "If you follow me you will become very, very powerful. If you follow him your achievements will be limited." Yi Xian smiled but didn't say anything. He was a bit surprised. He hadn't expected that the girl would value Xiaoling so much. Xiaoling shook her head. "Not with you." The girl nodded. She didn't ask why. She wouldn't force anything. Just like Yi Xian's supreme treasure. If that treasure didn't choose to follow her she wouldn't force it. If it's mine it must be mine. If it's not, I won't accept it even if you give it to me. The girl picked up her chopsticks, picked up a small mushroom and placed it in her mouth. After a moment she nodded. "Not bad." Xiaoling hurriedly picked up her chopsticks as well. Yi Xian's cooking was quite good. After a while the little girl said, "In the chaotic universe aside from my divine kingdom, no other power can transcend. The school of Confucianism can't, the school of military strategy can't, the school of vertical and horizontal can't, and your Shenwu city can't either." Then she glanced at Yi Xian. "The chaotic universe must be unified. It must be unified in a real sense." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You're a swordsman and I can sense that you don't have much desire for power. Why do you want to unify the chaos verse? Isn't unifying the chaos verse a good thing?" Yi Xian smiled. "I'm just curious." The girl put down her chopsticks. "Responsibility. The responsibility of the divine kingdom is to unify the chaos verse. Since I'm the God Master, this is my responsibility." Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know why the 3 deserted worlds on your side still lost?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "Our strength is inferior to yours." The little girl shook her head. "Not exactly. The real reason is that you don't have a sense of belonging. The 3 deserted worlds each have their own way of doing things, each with their own thoughts. On your side benefits are paramount. There is no sense of family or country. In everyone's mind there is only benefit. For benefit you can betray everyone else. You only fight for yourselves." Once something goes against you, you will immediately change your way of thinking. You will become a pile of loose sand and even turn against the other side. Speaking of this, she looked at Zhou Xian. We fight for benefits but also for our beliefs. You, on the other hand, have no beliefs. Zhou Xian was silent. Just as the little girl said, the people on their side all had their own way of doing things. They had no sense of family or country. Many of them didn't even know what they were fighting for. Of course, most of them were fighting for themselves. All of them wanted to reap benefits. Under these circumstances, how could they face the divine kingdom? Although the Xinwu city was united, the difference in strength was too great. The little girl stood up and looked at Zhou Xian. You're a swordsman. You have pride and you are not afraid of the divine kingdom. However, have you ever thought that you are the city lord of the Xinwu city? With a single thought, you can decide the life and death of countless people in the city. As she spoke, she walked in front of Zhou Xian and lightly tapped Zhou Xian's chest with her finger. A swordsman's sword would rather be broken than bent. However, this does not mean that a swordsman can be a selfish person. If you are alone, you can be like this. However, you are not alone. Do you understand? Zhou Xian smiled. Actually, you can completely crush the Xinwu city. Why are you so patient with me in telling me this? The little girl didn't answer. She sat down and said, You can tell me your answer now. Zhou Xian thought about it and said, I still want to fight for it. The little girl looked at Zhou Xian. At this time, 11 people appeared behind her. Just these 11 people, no one in the Xinwu city could stop them. At this time, Zhou Xian said again, How about this? I will fight with you first. If I can't win, the Xinwu city will follow your will. If I win, the Xinwu city will be like before, unrestricted by anyone. Of course, we will only stay in the Xinwu city and will not expand our forces outside. How about it? The little girl looked at Zhou Xian. You don't want to give up, so you want to fight, but you don't want to start a war with my god nation with the holy martial arts city. So, you want to fight my god nation in your own name? Zhou Xian nodded. The little girl said, This request of yours is beneficial to you but not to me. So, I also want to make a request. Zhou Xian said, Speak. The little girl said, No matter what the final outcome is, you have to help me with one thing. After a moment of silence, Zhou Xian nodded, Sure. The little girl nodded, Bring me to the sword sect first. Zhou Xian stood up, put away the table and said, Please. Just like that, the little girl came to the sword sect's hall under Zhou Xian's lead. In front of the sword sect's hall, there was a statue. It was the statue of the green-robed man. The little girl came before the statue of the green-robed man. She looked at the green-robed man in silence. Zhou Xian didn't disturb her. The little girl looked at the statue for a long time. Finally, she said softly, Why didn't his soul or avatar appear during the Great Wall War? Zhou Xian smiled bitterly, They have been used up. The little girl nodded, That's a pity. Then she turned to Zhou Xian. Do you want to fight one-on-one or call someone? Zhou Xian smiled, One-on-one first. The little girl nodded, I'll call someone. Zhou Xian looked straight at the little girl. I'll fight you one-on-one. The little girl looked at Zhou Xian but didn't say anything. One-on-one. Zhou Xian knew that the little girl was strong, very, very strong. Even Mu Nanji's avatar couldn't do anything to her, so one could imagine how strong she was. Moreover, the little girl before him was a sword goddess. It could be said that he was deeply afraid of her, or rather, slightly afraid. Zhou Xian was a human, not a god. Naturally, he would be afraid. However, he never ran away from his fear in his heart. The more afraid he was, the more he wanted to challenge. He could lose, but he couldn't be afraid. The little girl said softly, You surprised me. Zhou Xian smiled. Surprised about what? The little girl looked at Zhou Xian. No one has dared to challenge me since I was 10 years old in the kingdom of God. Zhou Xian said with a smile, I rarely challenge others, but I really want to have a fight with you. A real fight without any external objects. The little girl nodded, Sure. Zhou Xian said, Can I let the sword sect disciples watch? The little girl looked at Zhou Xian, Sure. Soon all the disciples of the sword sect arrived. The little girl curled her right hand, and a wooden stick suddenly flew into her hand from 30 m away. Zhou Xian was instantly put in a difficult position. He had wanted to take an ordinary sword, but the other party had taken a wooden stick. No matter how thick his skin was, he would be too embarrassed to take a sword. So he waved his right hand and the wooden stick fell into his hand. The little girl looked at Zhou Xian. In my world, the sword Dao is divided into 3 realms. The first is the wood sword realm, the second is the divine sword realm, and the third is the wood sword realm. Every sword represented a realm of the sword Dao. You should be in the divine sword realm now so you can take your executing heaven sword. Xian shook his head. I want to try a wooden sword. The little girl nodded. Make your move. Xian said, please enlighten me. With that he suddenly vanished. A cold light appeared in front of the little girl. The little girl stabbed out with her sword. It was a very calm stab. When the stab collided with the cold light instantly disappeared. Xian was about to attack again, but at this moment, 3 little girls suddenly appeared beside him. In the next moment, 3 swords stabbed at his forehead, the back of his neck, and his abdomen. All of them were fatal. Xian's expression changed slightly, and he swept with his sword. However, this strike missed, and in the next moment, a sword had already pierced his chest. The sword went half an inch deep. Blood splattered. And almost at the same time, Xian stabbed at the little girl. He instinctively chose to exchange life for life. However, the moment he attacked, the little girl had already returned to her original spot. Xian looked at the little girl, who said softly, "You're too slow." As her voice fell, she suddenly turned illusory. Not far away, Xian's expression changed. He was about to attack, but the little girl had already returned to her original spot. And at this moment there were 10 sword scars on his body. The little girl looked at Xian. The naked eye can never compare to the mind. The speed of using the hand to attack will never be faster than the heart. With the heart as the sword and the sword as the heart, one can achieve extreme speed. Xian said softly, "Is it the heart sword?" The little girl nodded. "Give it a try?" Xian slowly closed his eyes. After a moment he suddenly disappeared. This time Xian's speed was a little faster than before, but it was not obvious. In the distance the little girl suddenly raised her sword. Xian returned to his original spot. The little girl looked at Xian. Clear the heart of distractions, one sword to kill immortals. In the distance Xian was silent. Gap. He really felt the gap. This little girl's strength, even an emperor expert couldn't compare to her. Thinking of this, Xian smiled bitterly. In this world, there would always be some outstanding people who were so outstanding that people couldn't help but sigh. Why was there such a big gap between people? Hard work was important. However, talent was often more important. Besides talent, one's birth was also more important. The scariest thing was that people with good birth, with talent that made others despair, would work harder than ordinary people. Xian looked at the little girl. "I can't beat you. Admit defeat." What people were most afraid of was not losing but not being able to accept it. At this moment he regretting that he didn't learn sword Dao from the plain dress girl. And now, even if he wanted to learn, he couldn't find anyone. He could only rely on himself to slowly explore. And when Xian said, "I can't beat you," he suddenly felt his whole body relax like never before. Xian didn't want to lose to anyone of the younger generation, and as for this little girl, he didn't want to lose to her because from Qingqing until now he had never lost to anyone of the younger generation. However, he didn't know that this was an obsession. Many things, the more you want, the more you can't, the more you want to lose. Admit defeat. It was to let go of the obsession. Once the obsession was let go, the heart would naturally be light. The heart was light, the sword was fast. Xian suddenly looked up at the little girl. Another round. Chapter 625. Let's fight again. Everyone was looking at Xian. Xian's voice was very calm as he looked at the little girl. However, the little girl shook her head. "You have some enlightenment and you will transform. Unfortunately, you are still not my match." As she spoke, she opened her palm and the wooden branch slowly flew to the side. At this moment, the wooden branch suddenly flew in front of the little girl, trembling slightly. The wooden branch originally had no spirit, but the little girl just gave it a trace of spirit. The sword lives because of the person. The little girl gently stroked the branch and said softly, "You are not suitable to follow me. Stay here and let the sword intent slowly nourish you. If there is an opportunity in the future, you will have your own good fortune." With that she turned and left. As if thinking of something, she suddenly stopped and said softly, "You have lost. My people will take over Shenwu City." With that she walked into the distance. But soon she stopped again and turned to look at Xian. "You want Shenwu City to be free?" Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, if you do one thing for me, I can let Shenwu City be free for 10 years. 10 years? Yi Xian asked, what is it? If the little girl was willing to give him 10 years, it was undoubtedly a good thing for him. 10 years was enough for him to do many things. At this moment the little girl said, you will know in the future. Come with me. Yi Xian. Just like that, Yi Xian followed the little girl and left Shenwu City. On a giant golden dragon, the little girl stood on the dragon's head with her hands behind her back and her eyes slightly closed. Beside the little girl was Yi Xian, and behind them were the 11 black-robed powerhouses. Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, what do you need me to do? Intuition told him that it might not be a good thing. There were so many powerhouses in God Nation, but she just had to ask him. This was definitely not a normal matter. The little girl opened her eyes and said softly, you will know soon. Yi Xian said in a low voice, your people will not interfere with Shenwu City, right? The little girl nodded. I won't. However, your Shenwu City's Wuyuan and Sword Sect are not allowed to expand. Yi Xian smiled and said, don't worry, we just want to develop well now. The little girl nodded and slowly closed her eyes. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. At this moment he kept thinking about what the little girl had said to him. With the heart as the sword, with the sword as the heart. Not long ago when he was trapped by Ayu, he comprehended the Tao and became a sage. At that time he understood that he had to look straight into his heart. When he was fighting the little girl, he had an obsession in his heart. He did not want to lose, especially not to a swordsman of the same generation. The more he did not want to lose, the more indignant he felt. The moment he admitted defeat, he realized that his entire body had relaxed. This feeling was extremely comfortable, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He knew that the change in his mental state had caused his sword Tao to change as well. As for what the changes were, he did not know. The path of sword Tao was to cultivate the heart, and this heart might be cultivated for a lifetime. Every stage and every event would give him a new and different understanding. Perhaps this was life. At this moment he really missed the girl in the plain dress. If she was still here, many of his doubts about Sword Tao would definitely be easily solved. But now he could only rely on himself to comprehend everything. If he comprehended correctly, it would be fine, but if he comprehended incorrectly... At this moment the little girl suddenly said, we're here. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and looked down. Order City. The golden dragon landed and Yi Xian and the little girl got off the dragon. The little girl led Yi Xian towards the city lord mansion. On the way Yi Xian suddenly asked, I still don't know how to address you. The little girl said, Little Seven. Yi Xian was stunned. Little Seven? Little Seven nodded. Is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. This name is a little too simple. There must be some meaning to it, right? Little Seven calmly said, just call me Little Seven. Yi Xian. Not long later, Little Seven brought Yi Xian to the city lord mansion. At this moment there were 7 people there. He knew 2 of them. They were the 2 sword-hugging elders behind Little Seven. These 2 were Xianxia and Xiangyu. Among them he had met Xianxia once in Ascending Heaven City. Apart from these 2 there were 3 other elders. They were Master Lu Fu from the Confucian faction, Han Yuzi from the military school, and Wang Jingji from the school of vertical and horizontal. There was also a middle-aged man holding a blade. He wore a white robe and his eyes were closed as if he was in deep thought. Seeing Yi Xian, everyone was a little surprised. The little girl found a place to sit and the others all sat down. The little girl said, Did you find its location? Xianxia nodded. I know its approximate location. Little Seven asked, How strong is it? Xianxia said solemnly, Strength unknown. Little Seven nodded. Let the Celestial Arcanum sect continue to investigate. Xianxia said, They are doing their best to investigate. However, the other party is hiding very well. I'm afraid it will take some time to find its exact location. Little Seven was silent for a moment and then said, How are the Order Alliance, Tang Clan and the Monster Race? Xianxia said, They have fled to Sky Sea. That area is too big and complicated. Moreover, they are hiding in small groups, so we can't wipe them all out in a short time. However, once our side stabilizes, the people here can go over together. Little Seven said softly, Is there anyone willing to submit? Xianxia said solemnly, Yes, but very few. Little Seven nodded. Let Nangong handle this. If the Order Alliance, Monster Race and Tang Clan are willing to submit, I can let bygones be bygones. If they are stubborn and send the guards to Sky Sea, leave none alive. Xianxia nodded, understood. At this moment Little Seven looked at Yi Xian. You might be curious why I invited him here. Xianxia nodded. Little Seven said, I have decided to let him participate in our mission. When they heard this, all of them were stunned. The middle-aged man who was hugging the blade opened his eyes and glanced at Yi Xian before closing them. Xianxia hesitated for a moment and then said, Your Majesty, he is really too weak. Yi Xian, Little Seven said, he will be useful. Xianxia nodded, I will listen to Your Majesty's orders. Little Seven said, All of you can leave first. Xianxia and the others turned around and left. At this moment Yi Xian said, What are all of you going to do? Little Seven said, You will know in the future. Follow me. After saying this, she walked off into the distance. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. He had boarded a pirate ship. In just a while Little Seven brought Yi Xian to a training field. Yi Xian was delighted. You want to spar with me? He had gained a lot from sparring with Little Seven. Little Seven shook her head. She opened her palm and 3 sword-wielding mechanical puppets appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was shocked. You want me to spar with them? Little Seven nodded. I used them to cultivate in the past. You can try. Yi Xian looked at the 3 mechanical puppets. In the next moment he suddenly disappeared. Pretty much at the same time the 3 mechanical puppets suddenly attacked. Along with 3 ripping sounds, Yi Xian instantly returned to his original position. The moment he stopped, the 3 swords suddenly stabbed at him from 3 different angles. Fast. Accurate. Vicious. That was Yi Xian's first thought. Yi Xian was about to take the sword when the little girl suddenly said, You are not allowed to use your executing heaven sword. Yi Xian, just like that Yi Xian was tortured. In the boundless starry sky, a giant carried a tombstone that was thousands of feet long and slowly moved forward. Every step the giant took caused the entire starry sky to tremble violently. The giant kept walking in one direction for who knew how long. On this day the giant suddenly stopped and looked into the distance with deep eyes. On his shoulder the tombstone suddenly trembled. On the tombstone 2 large blood-red words became more and more enchanting. These 2 blood-red words were, Yi Xian. After a moment the giant continued forward. In an unknown place there was a small island that floated in the starry sky. On the island there was a palace. The entire island was surrounded by immortal qi, like a paradise. In the palace, a woman in white sat quietly. In the woman's hand there was a scroll and on her left there were 2 tortoiseshell. This person was the former patriarch of the Tang clan Mu Nanji. Suddenly Mu Nanji frowned. She looked up at the horizon and pinched her fingers. After a moment her expression changed. Is she crazy? After saying that she suddenly got up and left. At this moment a voice came from the palace. Where is Master going? Back to the chaotic universe. In a certain city in front of a blacksmith, a man with a scraggly beard was lying on a chair, a broken sword hanging from his waist. The man was lying on the chair drunk. At this moment the space in front of him suddenly trembled, and a voice came from within. After a moment, the man suddenly opened his eyes. Sword light flashed in his eyes. How dare you? After saying that he suddenly got up and flew into the sky on his sword. At this moment, a woman from the blacksmith chased after him. Where are you going? A voice came from the horizon. Go back. The woman said angrily, Jian Nanshan, didn't you say that you don't care about the sword sect anymore? In the horizon the voice said, It has nothing to do with the sword sect. Wait for me to come back. In front of a cliff, a middle-aged man sat cross-legged. The middle-aged man was covered in weeds. No one knew how long the middle-aged man had been sitting here. Suddenly, the space in front of the middle-aged man slightly trembled. After a moment, the middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Someone is more arrogant than me, Zhou Yafu? After saying that, he got up and left. In a galaxy, a man walked in the sky. The man had shoulder-length hair, and there was an unsheathed blade and a sheathed sword hanging from his waist. At this moment the space in front of the man suddenly trembled. The man stopped. After a long time the man said softly, Tu Tendo interesting. After saying that, he turned around and left. In a room in the City of Order, Xianxia sat quietly. In front of her there was a sword. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Your Majesty, I have found the exact whereabouts of the Tendo. However, it seems to be calling someone." Xiaoqi nodded slightly. "Got it. P.S. Please save your monthly tickets, I am going to explode on the 15th. Chapter 626. On the training field. Xian was still sparring with the 3 mechanical puppets. He had to say that sparring with the 3 mechanical puppets was very rewarding. And every time after sparring he would sit down and meditate. Enlightenment. At this moment Xian truly understood the importance of the word enlightenment, especially as a swordsman. Just like that, he trained in this training field for a full half a month. In this half a month he had greatly improved in all aspects, especially in terms of strength and speed. Now that he did not use Dragon Soul and Dragon Power, his speed and strength were several times stronger than before. Especially after he used Heart as sword. Sword with heart. And that Xiaoqi would come every once in a while, and every time she came the mechanical puppet would become much stronger. On this day Xian, who was training, suddenly stopped. He turned around and took a look, then left. Outside Order City. Xian came to a dense forest. In the dense forest he saw a familiar person. Tang Qing. Seeing Tang Qing, Xian was a little surprised. "Miss Tang?" Tang Qing nodded. "Let's talk somewhere else." With that she left with Xian. Not long later Xian and Tang Qing came to the depths of the forest. On the way Tang Qing suddenly asked, "You surrendered to God Nation?" Xian smiled. "No." Tang Qing turned to look at Xian. Xian smiled lightly. "Miss Tang Qing came to find me, there should be something, right?" Tang Qing was silent. Xian said softly, "Miss Tang Qing, I discovered something, do you know what it is?" Tang Qing shook her head. Xian said, "Back then I fought with you against God Nation, but unfortunately we were never united. Especially that Star Lord, he wanted me dead time and time again. But other than the Southern Sect Martial Masters, no one stood on my side. I think that the Demon King also wants me dead. Perfected Chu also wants me dead. Even your Tang clan's patriarch Tang Yen probably thinks the same. Right?" Tang Qing was silent. Xian asked again, "Fight against the God race? In fact, the few of you have never thought about the common people in this world. You only think about your own interests." As he spoke, Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. He softly said, "My abilities are limited and I can't be the savior of the world. As long as I, my friends, and the Divine Martial City are safe, that's all that matters." Tang Qing looked at Xian and did not say anything. Xian smiled and said, "After God's Nation took over your territories, they didn't slaughter you. But I dare to guarantee that if your clans enter the God Nation will definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. Do you believe me?" Hearing this, Tang Qing sighed softly. Because she knew that what Xian said was true. If they entered the God Nation, the people of the God Nation would be plunged into misery and suffering. After the Divine Nation entered the 3 deserted worlds, it did not return. Robbery, this was something she had not expected. Not only that, the policies implemented by the Divine Kingdom in some places were very good. Moreover, with the suppression of the Divine Kingdom, there were fewer conflicts in many places. Of course, the Order Alliance, the Tang clan, and the monster race must have suffered heavy losses. Everything was gone. Xian suddenly said, "Miss Tang, why are you looking for me?" Tang Qing glanced at Xian and said, "Can't I look for you for no reason?" Xian smiled and said, "Of course not. I am also very happy to see Miss Tang Qing." Tang Qing looked at Xian and said, "Happy about what?" Xian grinned and said, "Of course I am happy to be with a beauty." Tang Qing shook her head and said, "Xian, if you are not interested in a girl, don't seduce her." Xian. At this time Tang Qing suddenly said seriously, "I heard that you are with that girl, so I came to look for you. Tell me, why are you following her?" Xian said in a low voice, "I promised to do something for her." Tang Qing asked, "This is why she did not cause trouble for Shenwu City?" Xian nodded and said. Tang Qing was silent. Xian looked at Tang Qing and said, "What is it?" Tang Qing shook her head and said, "You must leave her." Xian was a little puzzled and said, "Why?" Tang Qing said in a low voice, "Something big might happen in Shenwu City recently." Xian asked, "What big thing?" Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, if Miss Tang Qing is not willing to say, I will not force you. Tang Qing glanced at Yi Xian and said, I do not know the specifics. I only know that the Order Alliance, my Tang clan and the monster race are preparing to counterattack at any time. Yi Xian frowned and said, counterattack? Tang Qing nodded and said. Yi Xian asked, what do you use to counterattack? Tang Qing said softly, I do not know. However, since they dare to choose to counterattack, they must be confident. Therefore there might be some changes in Shenwu City. Therefore it is best that you leave her. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Miss Tang Qing. Tang Qing turned around and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought about it and said, if you need anything, remember to inform me. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and said, take care of yourself. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian kept silent for a long while and then he turned around and left. After returning to Order City, he noticed that Seven was at the training ground. Seven said, she is the Lady Tang from the Tang clan? Yi Xian's face sunk as he was noticed. Seven said, I won't hurt her. Yi Xian looked at Seven. Miss Seven, what do you want me to help you with? Seven said, you will know soon. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Miss Seven, you know that I am a coward and I can't be frightened. Seven looked at Yi Xian. You can go back on your word. Go back on his word? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He wanted to go back on his word, but he had his principles. Since he promised her, then he had to do it. Of course, if it was something that went against his principles, then he wouldn't do it. As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking about, Seven said, don't worry, I won't ask you to do anything like kill people. When he heard that, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't killing people, then it shouldn't be a big deal. Seven said, follow me. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian followed. On the way, Seven suddenly asked, how is your cultivation? Yi Xian said, I have improved by leaps and bounds. One had to say that his cultivation and sword technique had improved by leaps and bounds with the 3 mechanical puppets, including his flying swords. The thing he wanted to do the most was to fight Seven again. Seven nodded slightly when she heard Yi Xian. That's good. As soon as she finished speaking, she brought Yi Xian to a courtyard and he saw Xianxia and the others there. This time there were 4 more mysterious people wearing bamboo hats and black robes. When he saw them, Yi Xian's expression instantly became solemn. Danger. That was the first thing he felt when he saw them. How many experts are there in God's kingdom? Seven glanced at them and said, where are the border suppression blades? Xianxia bowed slightly. They will be here soon. Seven nodded. Are all of you ready? Xianxia said, everything is ready, just 2 more people. At this moment, a woman walked in. It was Nangongwan. Nangongwan glanced at Yi Xian, and then she walked in front of Seven and bowed slightly. Your Majesty, everything is ready. Seven nodded slightly and then she looked at Yi Xian. He will be joining us. Xianxia and the others glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Seven looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian said solemnly, Miss Seven, what are you going to do? You should at least let me be mentally prepared. He was getting more and more panicked. Seven looked at Yi Xian. Nothing much, I am just going to kill the Tendo. Kill the Tendo. Yi Xian was stunned. 2. Kill the Tendo? Seven nodded. Yi Xian was shocked. Didn't you say that you won't kill? Seven was calm. The Tendo isn't human. Yi Xian said, I. Chapter 627. Kill the Tendo. One had to say that Yi Xian was stunned. He knew about the heavenly Tao. It had almost killed him in the past. However, he had never thought about defying the heavens. Killing the Tendo was defying the heavens. Yi Xian said solemnly, Miss Seven, can I ask you why you want to kill the Tendo? Seven looked at Yi Xian. It shouldn't exist. Yi Xian didn't understand. Why? Seven smiled. Do you know why there is so much war here? Yi Xian shook his head. Seven said, it is because the Tendo doesn't want the living beings of this universe to be united. Yi Xian still didn't understand. Why? Nangongwan said, because if everyone is united, it won't be good for its rule. Have you noticed that the laws of this world are all set by it? Moreover, it controls all the sources of heaven and earth. All the sources of heaven and earth. Yi Xian kept silent. He didn't forget that when he tried to save Shaoling, he tried to take the Tendo source and was nearly killed by the Tendo. However, he didn't hate the Tendo at all. That was because it belonged to them. Just at this moment, Nan Gongwan suddenly said, "You definitely think that the Tendo source belongs to it, right?" Yi Xian asked, "Isn't it?" Nan Gongwan smiled, "Of course not. The Tendo source is something from the chaotic universe. When the chaotic universe was born, it had these sources. The source is controlled by the Tendo and it doesn't allow people to absorb it. Or rather, it only allows people it values to absorb it." Yi Xian kept silent. Nan Gongwan looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know why my god country is so strong? Because in the past the martial god slaughtered Tendo and gained control of Tendo's origin. Because of this, countless people in my divine nation can enjoy Tendo's origin. Therefore we are much stronger than you. On your side, you are still under the control of the Tendo, so many of your people can't become emperors. Why? Because it is restricting your strength. Only in this way can it enslave you forever." Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said in a low voice, "Miss Nangong, now that you mention it, I realize that this Tendo is quite bad. If it wasn't for its restrictions, then I, Yi Xian, would have become an emperor a long time ago." Tendo. Nan Gongwan's expression froze. She shook her head and said, "Don't put the blame on Tendo. You have your own problems." Yi Xian was speechless. At the side, Seven suddenly said, "Do you understand now?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss Seven, I am not familiar with the Tendo, so I don't know if it is good or bad. What I want to say is that I can't beat it. You want me to help you kill the Tendo? Are you asking me to be cannon fodder?" Everyone, Seven was slightly stunned. A moment later she shook her head, "I won't let you be cannon fodder and I won't let you attack. You will know when the time comes." Yi Xian thought about it and then nodded, "Okay." He seemed to have thought of something and said quickly, "Miss Seven, I want to complain about Nan Gongwan." Nan Gongwan glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Seven looked at Yi Xian and said, "What do you want to complain about?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "That day when I went to your god country, she brought me around. She said that she wouldn't attack guests, but she got tens of thousands of soldiers to beat me up and even wanted to kill me. She went back on her words and damaged the god country's reputation. I suggest stripping her of her Kingdom Knight title." Nan Gongwan was expressionless. Seven looked at Yi Xian, "You?" Yi Xian. A moment later Seven said softly, "City Lord Yi, you are an interesting person, just that your skin is a little thick." Nan Gongwan looked at Yi Xian. Not only is he thick, he has reached the realm of shamelessness. Yi Xian wanted to say something but Seven suddenly said, "I will accompany you to practice the sword." Yi Xian was delighted. "Okay, let's go." After saying that he turned around and left. Seven also walked out. In the field Xianxia sighed, "I wonder why His Majesty sent this fellow here." Nan Gongwan said softly, "His Majesty must have a reason. Moreover, Yi Xian isn't useless." Xianxia nodded, "That's true. If he stays in front of the Tendo for a period of time, the Tendo will probably collapse." Everyone in the surroundings smiled when they heard this. Martial arts field. Yi Xian and Seven stood there quietly. Seven looked at Yi Xian, "Draw your sword." Yi Xian nodded. In the next moment he tapped his feet and floated out. Seven closed her eyes and stabbed out. Ping. Along with an explosion, Yi Xian instantly returned to his original position. At this moment, a flying sword suddenly slashed in front of Seven. Seven's expression didn't change as she held the sword in her right hand and flicked it. The flying sword changed its position and flew to the right. But in the next moment, another flying sword appeared in front of her silently. Seven tilted her body slightly and perfectly dodged the flying sword. But at this moment Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her and slashed down. The sword was as fast as lightning. His current sword speed was much faster than before. Just as Yi Xian slashed down with his sword, a sword suddenly pierced the tip of his sword. In an instant Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. This was because he realized that the power in his sword had been completely dissolved. Yi Xian stopped and looked at Xiaoqi. The latter said softly, "Everyone has their flaws. If we can target their flaws, we will be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort." Yi Xian said solemnly, "One sword to break all techniques?" Seven nodded. "However, it is extremely difficult to break all techniques with one sword." Yi Xian asked, "Even you can't do it?" Seven looked at Yi Xian. "I am saying that it is difficult for you. For me, it isn't difficult. Yixian's face was filled with black lines. Damn, Xiaoqi walked towards Yixian. You have a good foundation and your flying sword is barely passable. Especially your sword will and your belief in the way of the sword. It's something I've never seen before. Unfortunately, your learning is a little mixed and even a little crooked, which greatly reduces your strength. Your sword path can be simpler. Yixian asked right away, how can it be simpler? Seven opened her palm and a sword appeared in her hand. What is this? Yixian said solemnly, a sword. Seven nodded. It is a sword. That is simple. Yixian kept silent for a moment before saying, you are saying that when I use the sword I mix in too many things? A weird expression flashed in Seven's eyes. You aren't that stupid. Yixian, Seven said, you have too many external objects. Although they are really strong, it makes your sword impure. A pure sword is even sharper. So, you have to separate your external objects from your sword. Yixian asked, can I merge them? Seven thought about it and said, how do you want to merge them? Yixian opened his palm. The Tao Law appeared in his palm. This is the Grand Tao Law. Can it be merged with my sword path? Seven took a look at the Grand Tao Law and nodded, yes. Yixian was delighted and asked right away, how? Seven said, can you lend it to me? Yixian nodded and passed the Great Tao Law to Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi took a look at the Great Tao Law and said softly, the power of the earth spirit is gathered here. As she said that, she looked towards Yixian. To merge, you have to control them completely. Do you know how to use earth spirit power? Yixian shook his head. Just at that moment, the Grand Tao Law in Seven's hand shook, and in the next moment, a golden sword appeared in front of her. A sword formed from earth spirit power. The ground around started to shake and large amounts of earth spirit power gathered towards the sword. Pretty much instantly, all the earth spirit power in the entire Order City gathered into the sword. Seven passed the sword to Yixian. Yixian took it and looked at Seven in confusion. Seven said, when you slash out, the power is Grand Tao Law and it is a one-time use. Yixian kept silent. Seven said, you have to understand what is yours. The sword is yours. If you want to merge, you have to reach a realm where everything can be a sword. Your sword is the core. Be it Grand Tao Law or other external objects, they can only be strengthened by external objects. As she said that, she took the Haoran Gaia from Yixian's hand and said, in my hands, it is a sword first and then Grand Tao Law. Yixian kept silent for a moment and then nodded, I understand. Seven said, what you need to do now is to be simple to make your sword simple. If your body is strong enough, these external objects will make you stronger. But if you completely rely on the power of these external objects, you will become weaker and weaker. Yixian asked, how do I make it simpler? Seven said, don't rely on your random things and be a pure swordsman. Yixian kept silent. Seven said, you can't bear to? Yixian kept silent. Seven said, when you hesitate deep in your heart, you are already infatuated with these external objects. Although they are strong enough, they are only temporary. Swordsman, having a sword is enough. Having a sword was enough. Yixian said softly, I understand. After saying that, he kept the Grand Tao Law. Only the sword. Seven nodded. She was about to say something when Nan Gongwan came to her side and said, Your Majesty, they are here. Seven said, did you miss anything? Nan Gongwan thought about it for a moment and then shook her head. No, everything has been arranged. Seven nodded and then she looked towards Yixian. Let's go. Yixian said solemnly, to Tendo? Seven nodded. Yixian nodded, let's go. To Tendo. He didn't know what Seven wanted him to do, but he knew that she definitely wasn't asking him to help fight. An existence like Tendo was definitely not something he could fight now. Roughly an hour later, a giant golden dragon flew out from the Order City and then towards the depths of the starry sky. P.S. Can I apply for leave? I have been a little arrogant recently and want to head out for a day. Chapter 628. Misty Sky Ocean. On a small island, Tang Yen stood quietly. He looked up at the horizon with a solemn expression. At this moment, the Demon King and Spiritual Master Chu appeared. Spiritual Master Chu said in a low voice, that little girl has already gone with her men. Tang Yen said, what are their chances of winning? Spiritual Master Chu shook his head. This divine nation is also unfathomable. Unfathomable. Divine Nation's strength had exceeded all of their expectations. At this moment, Spiritual Master Chu sneered. However, I think she's dreaming if she wants to kill a Tendo. Tendo. Tang Yen nodded. Those who had never encountered a Tendo would never know how terrifying a Tendo was. At this moment, the Demon King suddenly said that Yi Xian also went. Yi Xian. Hearing these two words, Spiritual Master Chu's face immediately turned cold. That traitor. We should have killed him. The Demon King shook his head. Let's not talk about him. Let's talk about the Order Alliance. Order Alliance. Hearing this, the atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. The Star Lord died in battle and now the Order Alliance has a leader, but his strength is too low compared to them. At this moment, devouring the Order Alliance is the best opportunity. At this moment, Tang Yen suddenly said, let's put this aside for now. Spiritual Master Chu nodded. Let's wait for Divine Nation's results first. The Demon King suddenly said, what if she succeeds? Spiritual Master Chu sneered. Is that possible? That's a Tendo we're talking about. Tang Yen said softly, it won't be that simple. Let's wait and see. The Demon King nodded. Let's wait and see. Let's see if that little girl can defy the heavens. In the distant horizon, a golden dragon spread its wings and soared. The colossal golden dragon's body was so huge that it practically blotted out the sky. On the golden dragon, Xiaoqi stood on the dragon's head. Behind her were Xiangqing and Xiangyu. Not far to the right were Confucian Institution's Master Lu Fu, military schools Han Yuzi and Wang Jingji. Not far to the left of Xiangqing and Yu was a middle-aged man holding a saber. Defense saber. The number one figure on the divine list 20 years ago. Apart from these people, there was also a black-clothed man with his eyes covered. The black-clothed man also held a long saber in his right hand. Yan Dao. It was as famous as the Guanyin saber and came from the same lineage. Apart from them, there was also a man holding a spear. The man looked to be in his 30s, dressed in white and wearing an iron mask. Xianxia. This person had already reached the realm of spear god at the age of 21. Of course, even a heaven-defying genius would pale in comparison to Xiaoqi. At the tail of the dragon, there was a woman in her 20s, with a slender figure and a long black staff in her hands. Number 1 on the divine list. He was currently ranked first on the divine list. Something worth mentioning was that when the previous Lord God was choosing his successor, there were 3 people at that time and Yuan Yi was one of them. In the end, everyone knew the result. Xiaoqi had become the Divine Kingdom's divine lord. Standing among this group of people, Yi Xian suddenly felt that he was a little weak. Soon the dragon entered the starry sky. Yi Xian was a little bored. He came to Yuan Yi's side and sized her up, then waved his hand. Hi. Yuan Yi opened her eyes and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Let's get to know each other. I'm Yi Xian. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. What's up? Yi Xian nodded. She sat next to Yuan Yi and asked, Miss Yuan Yi, I heard that you're ranked first on the divine list. I heard that you are number 1 on the god list. I have a question. What is my ranking in your god nation? Yuan Yi glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian said again, I think if I go all out I should be able to rank in the top 3, right? Yuan Yi still did not speak. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Yi. Miss Yuan Yi, I think you're a divine sorcerer. Do you know any ancient secret techniques? Speaking of this, he was a little excited. I've sparred with some divine sorcerers. Their ancient secret techniques are very interesting. You know them too, right? Yuan Yi was silent. Yi Xian asked again, I want to learn these ancient secret techniques too. With a wave of my hand I can summon wind, clouds, thunder and lightning. Looks very cool. Yuan Yi suddenly said, Shut up. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. Are we very close? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. We're strangers the first time but friends the second time. Yuan Yi was silent for a moment then said, City Lord Yi, what exactly do you want? Yi Xian said, I'm just chatting. I don't mean anything else. Yuan Yi said, I need to meditate. I can't chat. Yi Xian nodded. All right, I won't disturb you anymore. After saying that he turned around and left. But very quickly he stopped and turned to look at Yuan Yi. Miss Yuan Yi, do you think I can become a divine sorcerer? Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. Let's talk somewhere else? Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman wanted to hit him. A moment later Yi Xian came to Seven's side. He was about to say something when Seven suddenly said, "Nan Gong, chat with him." Yi Xian. 2 hours later the giant dragon entered the depths of space while they were still within the chaotic universe. Beside Nan Gong, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Miss Nan Gong, I won't hold it against you for wanting to kill me in the past." Nan Gong looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "It seems like I have to thank City Lord Yi." Yi Xian looked into the depths of space and said softly, "Miss Nan Gong, I am curious about something. God Nation is so strong, but has anyone left the chaotic universe?" Nan Gong was silent for a moment, then nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "What world is outside the chaotic universe?" Nan Gong said softly, "What other world can it be? A world like ours. It's also a dangerous world." Yi Xian said solemnly, "A dangerous world? How dangerous?" Nan Gong smiled. "City Lord Yi, do you want to go out and have a look?" Yi Xian nodded, "A little." Nan Gong shook her head. "You are too weak. You will die if you go out." Yi Xian looked into the depths of space, feeling a little lost. Weak. After coming into contact with God Nation, he realized that he was really too weak. There were too many strong people in this world. After a moment Yi Xian asked again, "How strong is the Tendo?" Hearing this, Nan Gong's expression gradually became solemn. "Very strong." Yi Xian asked, "How strong is very strong?" Nan Gong glanced at Yi Xian. "You will know when we fight. Slaughter the Tendo." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment the golden dragon suddenly sped up. Yi Xian looked up and saw that they had already arrived in the depths of space. About half an hour later the golden dragon suddenly stopped, and above them, a huge eye suddenly condensed. The huge eye looked down at Yi Xian and the others, its eyes indifferent. Yi Xian looked at the huge eye. "Tendo?" Nan Gong did not answer. In the distance Xiaoqi looked at the Guandao, who nodded slightly, and the next moment the Guandao shot up into the sky. In the starry sky the huge eye suddenly shot out 2 black lightning bolts. Wherever the lightning passed, space turned into nothingness. At this moment the Guandao in the sky suddenly drew its blade and slashed. With this slash the 2 lightning bolts instantly turned into nothingness, but the Guandao did not stop. It turned into a blade light and slashed at the huge eye. There was a moment of silence. Boom. The entire starry sky suddenly trembled, and then the huge eye slowly turned illusory, while the Guandao returned to the golden dragon. Yi Xian looked at the Guandao with a solemn expression. This person is so strong. Soon the huge eye in the sky disappeared completely. At this time Xiaoqi lightly stomped his right foot forward. The huge dragon soared forward, disappearing into the depths of the starry sky. About an hour later the dragon stopped, and not far from them there was a door. Above the door there was a small black word, Dao. Seeing this door, everyone's expression gradually became solemn. Xiaoqi looked at the door, and just as she was about to speak, a voice came from inside. "Genius from Divine Nation, come in and have a seat?" Obviously this was referring to Xiaoqi. Before Xiaoqi could speak, Nan Gong suddenly said, "No." Xiangqing also said solemnly, "Your Majesty, don't underestimate the enemy." Xiaoqi said softly, "It can't kill me." After saying that she walked towards the door. As if thinking of something, she suddenly stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. "You come in with me." Yi Xian. Everyone looked at Yi Xian, their eyes filled with confusion. Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded, "Okay." After saying that she walked through the door with Xiaoqi. Inside the door there was another world. On a small island. Yi Xian and Xiaoqi appeared on a small island. The island was not big, and the water around it was so clear that the bottom could be seen. Above them there was a blue sky and white clouds. And not far in front of them there was a woman sitting. She looked to be in her 20s, wearing a white dress. Her hair was white and even her eyebrows were white. At this moment the woman in white was looking at Yi Xian and Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi and Yi Xian walked over. In front of the woman there was a tea table, and she made a gesture of invitation. Xiaoqi sat down and Yi Xian did the same. Yi Xian's eyes were on the white-haired woman and he was really shocked. So this was Tendo. The woman in white sized up Xiaoqi and smiled. "You are even stronger than Wu Anning, and you are more of a monster than her." Xiaoqi looked at her. "You have 2 choices, do you want to hear them?" The woman in white smiled. "Yes." Xiaoqi nodded. "First, Leave the chaotic universe and never come back. Second, I will kill you and make you disappear from the world. Xian, the woman in white, shook her head and smiled. Little girl, I have to admit that you are a monster. However, if you want to kill me, it doesn't seem to be a simple matter. Xiaoqi looked at the woman in white. You choose the second, right? The woman in white smiled. You have two choices too, do you want to hear them? Xiaoqi nodded. Speak. The woman in white looked at Xiaoqi. You can manage the world below, but you can't touch anything about me. Xiaoqi asked, what about the second? The woman in white smiled. I will kill you. I will wipe out your god country. Xiaoqi nodded. I choose the second. The moment she said that, the entire area became silent. One could even hear a pin drop. Chapter 629. Second one. As soon as Xiaoqi said this, Xian knew that there was no way to resolve this matter peacefully. The white-haired woman wasn't surprised. She smiled. I'm a bit curious. Are you really going to kill me for the sake of the people down there or for yourself? Xiaoqi looked at the white-haired woman. For myself and for the sake of everyone behind me. The white-haired woman laughed. But have you ever thought about how my death would affect the Chaosverse? I am the last Tendo of the Chaosverse. Tendo? Xiaoqi shook her head. You gave yourself that title. The white-haired woman narrowed her eyes. She didn't say anything. Xiaoqi continued. There is no such thing as a Tendo in this universe. You are just a spirit, one of the more powerful spirits in the Chaosverse. As for you, you call yourself a Tendo who stands above all living beings and views them as ants. If the people of this universe want to obtain the prime essences of this universe, they must submit to you and be enslaved by you. Without you, this universe will be a better place. The white-haired woman laughed. Then do you know that if I hadn't controlled the prime essences, given your greed as a humans, the prime essences would have been wiped out long ago. At that time, those who came before would enjoy it while those who came after would suffer. Do you understand? Xiaoqi shook her head. You didn't do it for the sake of the Chaosverse. You did it for yourself. The white-haired woman said, I did it for myself. But do you know what would have happened to the Chaosverse if I hadn't suppressed it? Xiaoqi said softly, do we need to thank you? The white-haired woman shook her head. I just wanted to tell you that I didn't enslave the living beings of this universe. I took over the prime essences of the Chaosverse, but I didn't take everything for myself. In addition, because of my control, there have been very few emperors in the Chaosverse. You should know what will happen if there are too many of them. Xian suddenly asked, what will happen? The white-haired woman glanced at Xian. Often, the more powerful a person is, the more selfish and greedy they become. If there are too many great emperors, the source energy will be absorbed by them and they might even be able to control it. When she spoke up to hear, she glanced at Seven and smiled. If I die, then the quintessence will be under her control. At that time she can give it to whoever she wants. The reason why the divine nations were getting stronger and stronger was because they had absorbed all the origin of the Eastern Wasteland domain. Now, nearly 90% of the Eastern Wasteland domain's origin has disappeared. Seven said softly, Source belongs to this universe and not one person. As she spoke, she stood up. Since you don't choose to leave, then make your move. With that, Xianxia and the others appeared behind Xiaoqi. The white-haired lady smiled. They are all Emperor realm. At this point, she suddenly looked at Xian. What I don't understand is why did you call this guy here? Xian was speechless. Seven said calmly, is he weak? The white-haired woman sized up Xian. Weak. Xian said in a low voice, I'm not that weak, am I? The white-haired lady smiled, at least for now. However, you surprised me because that pagoda actually recognized you as its master. Xian asked, you recognize it? The white-haired lady shook her head. No, I only came into contact with it once. As she spoke, she opened her right hand and a fiery lotus suddenly appeared. Fire. Not far away, Nangongwan frowned. Holy fiery lotus. Xian looked at Nangongwan and the latter explained, Holy fiery lotus, the first divine fire in the entire chaotic universe, comparable to a peak emperor. At this time, a crystal blue water droplet suddenly appeared behind the white-haired lady. The water droplet was only the size of a thumb, crystal clear and beautiful. Water soul. Nangongwan looked at the white-haired lady. If I'm not wrong, the 5 elements sacred spirits are in your hands. The white-haired lady smiled. You're half right. As soon as she finished speaking, a golden ball suddenly appeared on her right. The golden ball emitted a faint golden glow and contained an extremely terrifying energy. On the white-haired lady's left, there was a wooden branch and a small clay man. The wooden branch was dark green and there were 2 green leaves on it. The small clay man was only the size of a palm but looked like a real person. At this moment it was smiling at Xiaoqi and the others. 5 elements sacred spirits. Xiaoqi looked at the white-haired lady. That's it. The white-haired lady smiled. Still not enough? As soon as she finished speaking, the small clay man beside her suddenly rushed out. The moment it rushed out, Xiangqing, who was beside Xiaoqi, suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. Bang! A wave of sword energy spread out and everyone retreated. As for Xiangqing, who had attacked with his sword, he retreated again and again. This time he retreated to the surface of the sea thousands of meters away. Seeing this scene, Yixian's expression became solemn. Was this small clay man so abnormal? In the distance the little mud man grinned. In the next moment, it charged towards Xiangqing again. It was too fast and everywhere it passed space was directly torn apart by it. Xiangqing's eyes narrowed slightly while a trace of seriousness could be seen in his eyes. He didn't dare act carelessly and he immediately took a step forward. In an instant an expanse of sword energy surged forward. Rumble. In practically an instant, the seawater beneath Xiangqing's feet instantly evaporated while he retreated explosively once more. He was suppressed. Xiangqing was instantly suppressed as soon as the battle began. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman suddenly smiled. This swordsman isn't bad. As soon as she finished speaking, the wooden branch by her side suddenly floated forward, and then numerous vines suddenly appeared in the surroundings. The vines seemed as if they were growing out of space and they were extremely terrifying. Meanwhile, Xiangyu suddenly stood in front of Xiaoqi, and then strands of sword energy swept towards the surroundings like a net. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Numerous dense sounds of cutting resounded incessantly in the surroundings. It wasn't just the vines that were being sliced apart, even the space in the surroundings was being sliced apart. It was an extremely shocking sight. Meanwhile, the wooden branch suddenly floated towards Xiangyu. Xiangyu's figure shook and he flew up into the air. He'd only just flown up into the air when a sharp vine suddenly shot up from below. Xiangyu's gaze was icy cold as he swiftly swung his sword. As the sword slashed down, the sharp vine was directly split into 2. But in the next moment, countless vines drilled out from the space around Xiangyu. They were densely packed and Xiangyu was instantly drowned by them. Moreover, a ray of sword energy could be faintly seen amidst the vines. Xiaoqi gazed at the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman grinned, and then the golden ball suddenly shot towards the Guanzhong blade by Xiaoqi's side. The Guanzhong blade suddenly drew its blade. Bang! An expanse of golden light suddenly erupted, and then both the Guanzhong blade and the golden ball were pushed back at practically the exact same time. But in the next moment, both of them shot explosively towards each other. Meanwhile, the ball of water by the white-haired woman's side suddenly shot towards Yan Dao. Yan Dao's face was expressionless. He took a step forward and a ray of sword energy suddenly flashed across the field. Saber energy flashed. Rumble. The surrounding space instantly cracked, but in the next moment the surrounding space returned to normal. In the next moment numerous water dragons suddenly appeared in the surroundings and shot towards Yan Dao. The densely packed water dragons were extremely frightening. Not far away, Yixian's face was solemn because he found that the people on Xiaoqi's side were all suppressed. It was as if these spirits were invulnerable and their strength was endless. The most terrifying thing was that the surrounding space seemed to be helping these spirits. Spirits of heaven and earth. Blessed by heaven and earth. Yixian looked at the white-haired woman who still had the flame in her hand. The white-haired woman glanced at the people around Xiaoqi, and then her gaze fell on Yucangxing, who was holding a long spear. Yucangxing nodded slightly and he walked forward. The flame in the white-haired woman's hand suddenly floated out. The moment it floated out of her palm, the surrounding temperature skyrocketed, making people feel as if they were in the middle of a volcano. It was extremely terrifying. Yucangxing's face was expressionless and he raised his spear. Bang! A flame instantly erupted and a wave of fire instantly engulfed the surroundings. However, the space around Xiaoqi, the white-haired woman, and the others was very normal, and the flames automatically dispersed. At this moment there were 4 people by Xiaoqi's side. Master Lu Fu of the Confucian Institution, Han Yuzi of the School of Military, and Wang Jingji and Yuan Yi of the School of Vertical and Horizontal. Of course, Nan Gongwan didn't count. After all, she didn't have any combat strength. At this moment Master Lu Fu suddenly smiled. I wonder what you're going to use against the 3 of us. The white-haired woman looked at Master Lu Fu and smiled. Don't worry. As soon as she finished speaking, she gently pointed her finger to the right. In an instant the island split open and a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. Under everyone's gazes, a huge black beast suddenly walked out from the ground. The huge beast was 30 meters tall, shaped like an ox and completely black. It emitted an extremely terrifying and primordial aura. Seeing this huge beast, a voice suddenly resounded from Zhou Xian. This is the D-Monarch beast. The voice of the Emperor Hound. Zhou Xian hurriedly asked, What's the D-Monarch beast? The Imperial Hound spoke solemnly, the guardian beast of the soul race. The guardian beast of the soul race? Zhou Xian was stunned and then he said, It's your sworn enemy? The Imperial Hound replied, Yes. Zhou Xian said, Are you going to come out and fight it? The Imperial Hound spoke furiously, What the hell? Even though it isn't at its peak, it's clearly not far from it. What about me? I'm in a weak state right now. Should I come out and ask for a beating? Zhou Xian spoke solemnly, Brother Imperial Hound, have your injuries not healed yet? The Imperial Hound spoke solemnly, It's not that I haven't healed, but my bloodline might be evolving. It's a critical period right now, so I can't attack. Once my bloodline evolves, this fellow will be trash before me. Zhou Xian was speechless. Not too far away, the white-haired woman suddenly smiled. D-Monarch, play with our city lord Yi. Zhou Xian instantly flared up. What the hell? I'm not playing with it. The white-haired woman smiled. Actually, I've been eyeing you for a long time. But in order to deal with Divine Nation, I've been busy. And that Star Lord is extremely stupid. Let's not talk about that stupid fellow. Since you're here, I can't let you escape no matter what this time. As soon as she finished speaking, the D-Monarch beside her charged directly at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian found it hard to breathe due to the strong pressure exerted by this charge. Zhou Xian was shocked and angry. Suddenly he pointed the soul-suppressing sword at the D-Monarch and shouted, Evil creature, do you know what this is? I am the reincarnation of Hades, hurry up and kneel. Little soul. P.S. I can't wait for the 15th. Erupt tomorrow. Erupt tomorrow. Chapter 630. Everyone was stunned when they heard Zhou Xian's words. And that Dijun actually stopped. The white-haired woman frowned slightly. Dijun looked at Zhou Xian with a trace of confusion in his eyes. Human, why is this sword in your hands? Zhou Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Dijun stop. This fellow was definitely not someone he could go against right now. Zhou Xian said coldly, Why is it in my hands? Don't you have any idea? Dijun frowned. What do I have? Zhou Xian said angrily, This is the Soul Clan's treasure. Why is it in my hands? Think about it. Think about it. Dijun thought for a moment and said, You stole it. Zhou Xian was speechless. Dijun felt that his idea was correct, so his gaze gradually became hostile. At this moment the soul-suppressing sword suddenly floated in front of him. Soul said, Dijun, do you know me? Soul. Dijun was stunned. You are little Soul Lord, Soul said. Dijun, he is the successor that Master personally appointed. If you dare to hurt him, Master will definitely not let you off. Master. Dijun's expression changed when he heard this word. Hades. He naturally could not forget this person. This person was his true master. Dijun glanced at Zhou Xian. Why did Master choose him? Soul said, This is Master's choice. Besides that, he is Jian Zizai's younger brother. If you hurt him, that woman will definitely not let you off. Jian Zizai. When the D-Lord heard these 3 words, a look of fear appeared in his eyes. In that era, both the Divine Clan and the Nether Clan were extremely afraid of Jian Zizai. When this woman went crazy, she would even slaughter her own clansmen. After a moment of silence, Dijun looked at the white-haired woman nearby. I can't hurt him. The white-haired woman smiled. Sure. Find someone else. Dijun turned to look at Yuan Yi, who was not far away. In the next moment he charged towards Yuan Yi. Yuan Yi had an emotionless expression on her face. In the next moment the staff in her grasp suddenly started to tremble, and then numerous blades of wind gradually appeared here. These blades of wind were sharp like blades, and space was instantly sliced apart in their path. As for Dijun, he used his physical body to resist it. He charged forward and shattered all the wind blades. When he arrived in front of Yuan Yi suddenly appeared 10,000 feet away. In the next moment, countless bolts of lightning appeared around Dijun. These bolts of lightning directly drowned Dijun. Boom boom boom. The surrounding space trembled violently. Not long after, the D-Lord stepped out of the thunderbolts. Then a powerful force swept towards Yuan Yi, who was not far away. Yuan Yi closed her eyes and chanted softly with the staff in her hand. Soon, powerful forces gathered from all directions. In the next moment she suddenly opened her eyes and pointed the staff in front of her. Break. Rumble. A powerful force suddenly erupted in front of her, and then the D-Lord was instantly pushed over 1 kilometer back. As soon as Dijun stopped moving, the space before him suddenly started to seethe. In the next moment Yuan Yi tapped the staff lightly. Lock. As soon as she finished speaking, numerous translucent chains locked onto Dijun. Spatial chains. As soon as he was trapped, numerous bolts of lightning engulfed him like a storm. However, it wasn't long before Dijun suddenly roared furiously and shattered the spatial chains. In the next moment his figure leaped up and collided with Yuan Yi. Yuan Yi's face was emotionless. She opened her left palm and there was a golden talisman there. As soon as she chanted, the golden talisman started to tremble violently. When Dijun arrived around 3 m away from Yuan Yi, the golden talisman in Yuan Yi's hand suddenly flew out. In the next moment, a strand of energy capable of obliterating the world erupted from within the golden talisman. Bang! The Dijun was forcefully stopped on the spot. At the same time the ocean water around the island suddenly shot into the sky, and it instantly drowned the Dijun. The Dijun roared madly with fury and intended to charge out of the ocean water. However, the ocean water slowly turned into ice. A short moment later, all the ocean water had turned into ice, and the Dijun was frozen solid. The white-haired woman still had a faint smile on her face when she witnessed this scene. Yuan Yi glanced at the white-haired woman and then she moved aside. Xian glanced at Yuan Yi. She's extraordinarily strong. Suddenly the Imperial Hound's voice resounded. Watch out. Xian hurriedly gazed at Yuan Yi. Watch out. Yuan Yi gazed at Xian. A moment later the frozen Dijun suddenly charged out of the ice prison, and a powerful aura swept through the surroundings. Rumble. Yuan Yi was instantly blasted 3 kilometers back. At this moment, the Dijun beast was emanating a strange aura. The Imperial Hound suddenly said, It's going berserk. That little girl is in danger. Xian gazed at the Dijun. The Dijun beast was charging at Yuan Yi, and it was more than twice as fast as before. Yuan Yi's expression became slightly solemn when she witnessed this scene. She waved her staff lightly and the space before her instantly became illusory. It didn't take long for countless mysterious flames to appear in the surroundings, and they instantly drowned the Dijun beast. However, the flames weren't able to cause any lethal harm to the Dijun beast. Suddenly, the white-haired woman gazed at Xian and smiled. Soul suppression sword. I didn't expect that. Xian spoke solemnly. Were you the one who gave the Star-Lord orders? The white-haired woman grinned. What do you think? Xian fell silent. It was obvious that it was definitely the woman who gave the order. Otherwise, the Star-Lord wouldn't have attacked him like a madman even though he knew that the situation was disadvantageous to the Star-Lord. After all, she was the true mastermind behind all of this. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman smiled. That treasure of yours is amazing. After all, I've gathered most of the treasures in the chaotic universe, but none of them can compare to that pagoda of yours. Why don't you give it to me? Xian's face was expressionless. Why don't I give it to you? The white-haired woman roared with laughter. You're the second human in so many years that dares to speak to me like that. Xian asked, who was the first? The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi. It's her. However, all of you will pay for your foolish actions. As soon as she finished speaking, 3 old men appeared behind her. Xiaoqi spoke softly when she saw the 3 of them. I understand now. You've been cultivating your own forces all these years. Xiaoqi smiled. When your kingdom slaughtered my good sister all those years ago, I knew that the day would come when your blades would be pointed at me. If it was 1,000 years ago, I really wouldn't be able to resist all of you. Unfortunately, all of you were unlucky and encountered someone you couldn't defeat, and all the elites of your kingdom perished. Xiaoqi nodded. There are all sorts of accidents in life, but this time there won't be any. The white-haired woman smiled. Actually, all of you want to kill me, but I also want to destroy your kingdom. All of you are too strong. It's not easy to control. As soon as she finished speaking, the three behind her charged at Master Lu Fu's group. A great battle began. Only Yi Xian, Xiaoqi and Nangongwan were left. Xiaoqi looked at Nangongwan and the latter bowed slightly before leaving. Nangongwan was a strategist, not a warrior. After Nangongwan left, Xiaoqi looked at the white-haired woman. Do you want to fight me? The white-haired woman smiled. I've prepared an opponent for you. As soon as she finished speaking, a skinny old man suddenly appeared behind her. The skinny old man only had one leg, one arm, and only 2 or 3 strands of hair on his head. The skinny old man looked at Xiaoqi with a calm expression. Xiaoqi suddenly smiled. The white-haired woman smiled. Do you think I'm looking down on you? No, I value you a lot. After all, you're the most monstrous swordsman in the history of the chaotic universe. Yi Xian suddenly said, Do I count? The white-haired woman looked at Yi Xian. Don't be so naughty. I'll deal with you later. Yi Xian. The white-haired woman looked at the skinny old man and smiled. It seems like the people of the chaotic universe have forgotten about you. The skinny old man said softly, You saved my life in the past, so I'll fight for you. The white-haired woman nodded. No matter who wins or loses, we're even. The skinny old man nodded, then looked at Xiaoqi and said softly, It's hard to imagine that you're only in your teens. At this moment, Nangongwan's voice suddenly resounded. Your Majesty, he's Emperor Zhou Xian, the first expert to become an emperor in the chaotic universe. He's said to be the strongest after the era of the god race. Emperor Zhou Xian. After the era of the god race, the chaotic universe's martial arts civilization was in a slump for a period of time. However, that didn't mean that there weren't any experts. Emperor Zhou Xian, this person was the most dazzling existence of that era. Because he was the first person to become an emperor since the era of the god race. Emperor Zhou Xian looked at Xiaoqi. Make your move. Xiaoqi shook her head. Emperor Zhou Xian frowned. I'm not qualified for you to make your move? Indeed not. A middle-aged man suddenly appeared behind Xiaoqi. The middle-aged man held a folding fan in his hand and had a faint smile on his face. I'm Gu Zhongwu, a small martial master of God Nation. Martial master. Gu Zhongwu wasn't an ordinary martial master. He was the martial master of all the armies in God Nation, including the most mysterious divine martial army and the Dark Guards. Most importantly, he was also one of Xiaoqi's teachers. Emperor Zhou Xian glanced at Gu Zhongwu. Let's go somewhere else. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately disappeared. Gu Zhongwu glanced at the white-haired woman not far away. Your Majesty, be careful. After saying that, he disappeared. There were only 3 people left in the field. Yi Xian, Xiaoqi and the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman still had a faint smile on her face. She looked at Yi Xian. Let's exchange a few moves? Yi Xian was silent. The white-haired woman smiled. You don't dare. Yi Xian said softly, You really think I'm easy to bully, right? The white-haired woman nodded. Indeed. Yi Xian said softly, Let's fight somewhere else? The white-haired woman smiled. Where else? Yi Xian said, Let's fight in my tower. I promise I won't beat you to death. Xiaoqi. Chapter 631. Enter the tower and fight. The white-haired woman suddenly roared with laughter. Yi Xian, you are really shameless. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. However, I am willing to enter the tower with you. Enter the tower. Yi Xian fell silent. He hadn't expected that the white-haired woman would actually be willing to enter the tower with him. Was she too confident or arrogant? He was definitely too confident. This was because this white-haired woman did not seem to be a fool. When she saw Yi Xian remain silent, she smiled. Are you afraid? Yi Xian shook his head. What is there to be afraid of? Let's go. At this moment, Seven suddenly said, I will go as well. Yi Xian looked at Seven and nodded. Come in. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 of them vanished at the same time. Prison pagoda within the tower. The white-haired woman looked around and said softly, "Is this something from the fifth dimension?" Seven sized up the surroundings as well. At this moment the white-haired woman's gaze suddenly descended onto Xiaolinger. Xiaolinger looked at the white-haired woman with a wary gaze. The white-haired woman said softly, "Source spirit." Xiaolinger looked at the white-haired woman. "You aren't human." The white-haired woman smiled. "Indeed, I am not human." Xiaolinger hesitated for a moment and said, "Can all of you fight somewhere else?" She was afraid that her spirit tree would be lost if they fought here. The white-haired woman smiled. "If we fight somewhere else, your big brother won't have any chance of winning." Xiaolinger looked at Zhou Xian and hesitated for a moment before she said, "Big brother, you can't beat her." She and the white-haired woman were actually the same type, so she could sense how strong the white-haired woman was. The white-haired woman suddenly smiled. "I don't intend to fight him." As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm. In an instant the entire prison pagoda started to tremble. Zhou Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This woman wanted to forcefully subdue the prison pagoda? Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of the white-haired woman. You looked at the white-haired woman. Scram. The white-haired woman grinned. "No." You suddenly said, "Return." As soon as he finished speaking, the General Dao Principle, the Dream Dao Principle, and the Space Dao Principle suddenly disappeared into the space between Zhou Xian's eyebrows. Not only those three Dao Principles, but you also suddenly disappeared into the space between Zhou Xian's eyebrows. In an instant Zhou Xian's eyes widened. At this moment Yu's voice sounded in his head, "Activate the prison tower." Zhou Xian hurried to do as he was told. Soon the prison tower was activated. An illusionary blood-red character, Prisoner, quietly appeared above the white-haired woman's head. The white-haired woman's expression changed. In the next moment the white-haired woman left the pagoda. However, the blood-red prisoner character was still above her head. Zhou Xian also exited the prison pagoda. He looked at the white-haired woman not far away from him. At this moment he felt that there was a mysterious power within his body. This power made him feel as if he could control everything. Zhou Xian's expression suddenly turned ferocious. But at this moment the power suddenly disappeared and Yu and the Dao laws returned to the pagoda. Zhou Xian was stunned and then he said, "Don't stop. We'll kill her." Yu didn't answer. Instead he returned to the fifth floor. Zhou Xian was speechless. Across from Zhou Xian the white-haired woman looked at Zhou Xian. "It has indeed recognized you as its master." At this moment her expression was solemn because in that instant she felt danger. Zhou Xian looked at Xiaoqi. "Miss Xiaoqi, I don't think there's a need. I'm going to waste my breath on her." Seven nodded. She looked at the white-haired girl and in the next moment she disappeared. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. At practically the exact same time, the white-haired woman suddenly retreated explosively. She'd retreated 500 kilometers, but the ray of sword light was still right in front of her. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman suddenly pressed her palms together. Her palms blocked the ray of sword light, but in the next moment, bang! The white-haired woman instantly retreated a few thousand kilometers. She'd left Zhou Xian's field of vision with this retreat. Right at this moment the space here suddenly became illusory. Zhou Xian had a solemn expression on his face. It was caused by that sword strike. This was a space that had been created, but it had actually been unable to endure Xiaoqi's attack. In next to no time, the space here had become completely illusory, and everyone had appeared in the boundless starry sky. As for the white-haired woman, she'd suddenly returned to not too far away from Xiaoqi and she gazed at her. What a formidable attack! As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly punched Xiaoqi from afar. It was a very calm punch, but it contained the might to obliterate the world. Not too far away, Xiaoqi's face was expressionless. Her body suddenly became illusory and in the next moment, the terrifying power released by the white-haired woman was suddenly cut apart. At the same time, the white-haired woman was forced back nearly 1,000 miles. As soon as the white-haired woman stopped moving, Xiaoqi suddenly drew her sword. A strand of sword energy tore through the sky. It seemed like it was about to tear the starry sky apart and it was extremely terrifying. The white-haired woman opened her palm and then she pressed it forward lightly. All things gather. Rumble. The space in front of her suddenly shook violently, and then a mysterious force instantly blocked that strand of sword energy. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman spoke once more, split. As soon as she finished speaking, the strand of sword energy was split apart and instantly vanished. Xiaoqi walked slowly towards the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman chuckled. If you want to defy the heavens, then I'm afraid this little bit of strength isn't enough. Xiaoqi suddenly vanished. The white-haired woman's smile froze, and in the next moment her figure became illusory. Meanwhile, Xiaoqi had appeared behind her. Dead. Yixian was stunned not too far away. You wouldn't have died just like that, right? Meanwhile, the white-haired woman had suddenly appeared where Xiaoqi had been standing just now. Xiaoqi turned around to look at the white-haired woman, and the latter spoke softly, "You actually killed one of my clones." Clone? Not far away, Yixian's expression froze. He didn't expect that the one that Xiaoqi killed was actually the white-haired woman's clone. Then there was a problem. Was the one in front of him a clone or the main body? Yixian looked at Xiaoqi and she walked towards the white-haired woman. She walked really slowly. The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi and smiled. I have to say that you are indeed the most monstrous existence in the chaotic universe. Even if you were placed in the god race era, you would be able to look down on everyone. Xiaoqi said softly, this world doesn't need a Tendo. The white-haired woman smiled. Without me there will be other Tendo. There will also be other heavenly Daoists like you. If I lose, you will be the next heavenly Dao. Xiaoqi shook her head. I won't be a Tendo. The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi. Do you know how greedy you humans are? The destruction of one world after another is all because of the greed of you humans. If I wasn't controlling it, this chaotic universe would have been destroyed long ago. Xiaoqi looked at the white-haired woman. The woman said softly, humans have to survive. To survive we have to cultivate. To cultivate we have to absorb spiritual energy. There is no other way. The white-haired woman laughed coldly. So, this universe should be sacrificed? Xiaoqi shook her head. There is no right or wrong. Everyone has to survive. Either you die or I die. Unless all humans and living beings die, otherwise the universe will head towards destruction. The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi. Without you humans, the universe will live longer. Xiaoqi said, you don't have the right to comment because you are also absorbing the source of this universe. Moreover, you control the source and some special spiritual energy. You are no different from us humans. The white-haired woman said coldly, if I don't cultivate, then won't I be slaughtered by you humans? Xiaoqi said, if humans don't cultivate, then they will be slaughtered by you. When she said that, she looked at the white-haired woman. I am a human, I am the ruler of the god country. I will fight for the people of the god country and stand on the side of humans. The moment she said that, she pulled out her sword. Boo! A strand of sword energy flashed through the battlefield. In an instant, the white-haired woman's body turned illusory. But in the next moment, the illusory body condensed once more. The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi and was about to speak when Xiaoqi suddenly attacked. The sword slashed through the sky and the white-haired woman's body was instantly split into two. But in the next moment her body condensed once more. Xiaoqi stopped. The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi and smiled. Actually, you are right. We are on different sides. I can tell you that after I kill you I will reorganize the chaotic universe. At that time I will make sure that there are no humans in this universe. Humans are so annoying. Xiaoqi said softly, then you have to kill me first. The white-haired woman nodded. I will definitely kill you. You are the most annoying. The moment she finished speaking, she suddenly pressed her hands together. In an instant the space in front of her was torn apart. In next to no time, a pitch-black hand grabbed out from the torn space. Xiaoqi was expressionless as she raised her hand and slashed. It was a very calm slash. However, it was this slash that directly shattered the hand. At the same time, a thread of sword energy pierced through the white-haired woman's forehead. Boo! After the sword energy pierced through the white-haired woman's forehead, it didn't stop and tore through the sky. In next to no time it disappeared into the starry sky. At this moment the white-haired woman's illusory body had condensed once more. Seeing this, Yixian's face sank. Is this woman unkillable? The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi and smiled. I am the Tendo of this universe. As long as this universe is not destroyed, I will not die. No matter how powerful your sword Dao is, you can't kill me. Do you understand? Xian suddenly asked. How did you learn this move? I want to learn it too. The white-haired woman looked at Xian and smiled. Xian, after I deal with her, I will deal with you. I still remember how you forcefully took my source energy that day. Xian was speechless. Right at this moment, Seven suddenly said, Lend me your sword for a moment. Xian was stunned, and then he flicked his finger and the executing heaven sword appeared in front of Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi held the executing heaven sword and looked at the white-haired woman. I don't know if this sword can kill you. At this moment, the smile on the white-haired woman's face disappeared. She was extremely cold. The white-haired woman stared at Xian with a gaze that was like a sword that could kill. At the side, Xiaoqi suddenly said, Sometimes external objects need to be used. Xian was speechless. P.S. Also. Chapter 632. Executioner Heaven. When Xiaoqi held the sword, the expression of the white-haired woman finally changed. She really couldn't be killed in this chaotic universe. However, it would be a completely different story if this sword was included. Executioner Heaven. If the soul-suppressing sword was said to be specialized against souls, then Executioner Heaven was specialized against spirit beasts like Tendo. Just at that moment, Seven suddenly disappeared. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. Not far away, the expression of the white-haired woman changed. In the next instant, she had already retreated 1,000 li away. She didn't dare to take Xiaoqi's attack head-on. Xiaoqi walked slowly towards the woman. She walked very slowly, but her figure was gradually becoming ethereal. He was swift to the extreme. Xian turned around to look at where the white-haired woman was. The white-haired woman was still retreating. She still didn't dare to take Xiaoqi's attack head-on. Meanwhile, Xiaoqi stopped moving and she suddenly turned around to look at the Truth Lord Beast. At this moment, Yuan Yi was locked in fierce battle with the Truth Lord Beast. Xiaoqi glanced at the woman, and then she swung her sword towards the right. 3 kilometers away. Bang! The Truth Monarch Beast was instantly sent flying by a sword light. This time it was sent flying for thousands of feet. As soon as it stopped moving, its entire body cracked apart and blood sprayed out. The Truth Lord Beast gazed at Xiaoqi with deep fear in its eyes. Its defense was extremely terrifying, but in front of this little girl, its physical defense was like paper. Especially when she was holding Executioner Heaven. Xiaoqi paid no attention to the Truth Lord Beast. She gazed at the woman who was staring at her. Xiaoqi didn't speak as well. She suddenly vanished and then a ray of light flashed. It was swift to the extreme. The white-haired woman's eyes instantly narrowed when she saw this attack, and then she retreated explosively in the next moment. However, the ray of sword light was like a maggot that followed her closely. At this time, the white-haired woman flipped her palm and a black spear appeared in her hands. She then thrust it out viciously. Rumble. The surrounding space violently trembled, and the spear in the white-haired woman's hand instantly shattered. The powerful force caused her to instantly retreat nearly 1,000 feet. The white-haired woman stared fixedly at Xiaoqi. She reached out and in an instant, a black ruler appeared in her palm. At this time, Xiaoqi suddenly appeared in front of the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman swung the long ruler in her hand. Xiaoqi's sword came out. Boom. In the blink of an eye, a powerful force exploded in front of them. The white-haired woman retreated repeatedly and she retreated for over 10 kilometers. As soon as she stopped moving, the ruler in her hand directly cracked apart. Although it wasn't completely broken, it was covered in cracks. Could be said that it was completely scrapped. Seeing this, the white-haired woman's face sank. This ruler was no ordinary Dao realm treasure. It was an ancient Dao realm treasure. However, it still could not stop that sword. The white-haired girl looked at Seven. At that moment, Seven suddenly disappeared. He was too quick. The white-haired woman's body trembled and she disappeared. Xiaoqi stopped and frowned slightly. She looked around and found that the white-haired woman was no longer there. Where did she go? Seven slowly closed her eyes. The Oracle Sect. After a short moment, Nangong Wan's voice resounded in Seven's mind. She hasn't left. Seven looked around and said softly, "You aren't coming out?" There was no response. Seven suddenly turned around and swung her sword. Not far away, the 5 elements wood branch was suddenly slashed into pieces. Seven didn't stop. She swung her sword again. Thousands of meters away, A ball of flames instantly exploded and turned into nothingness. In an instant, the 5 elements' Holy Spirit was killed by her. As for the remaining Emperor Zhou Xian and the others, they retreated and didn't continue fighting. Everyone was looking at Seven, who was holding the heavenly retribution. Seven walked slowly towards Emperor Zhou Xian and the others. Do you know where she is? Emperor Zhou Xian said solemnly. Sir, she has become one with this universe. If you kill her, it will severely affect this world. Seven said softly. You don't have to worry about this. My theocracy will take care of everything. Emperor Zhou Xian glanced at Seven and didn't speak another word. Suddenly, the starry sky in the surroundings started to tremble. In next to no time, numerous strange barriers of light appeared in the surroundings, and they were like a cage that locked everyone here within it. Seven raised her hand and swung her sword. A ray of light slashed against the barrier of light. Bang! The barrier of light shook violently and cracked apart, but it returned to normal in an instant. Formation. Xian glanced at the surroundings, and there were strange talismans flickering on the barriers of light. Suddenly Xianxia said, Shit! Our lifespans are flowing away. Their lifespans were flowing away. Everyone here was shocked. But right at this moment, Emperor Zhou Xian and the others suddenly vanished. Moreover, the lifespans of everyone within the formation were flowing away at an extremely swift pace. Seven took a step forward and swung her sword. A barrier of light was instantly split apart, but it instantly healed in the next moment. Seven's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, she suddenly gazed at Xian, the spatial Dao Law. Xian was stunned, and then he withdrew the spatial Dao Law. Seven said, Change the space here. Xian nodded, and then he started to utilize the spatial Dao Law to change the space in the surroundings. But it didn't take long for a mysterious force to appear in the surroundings, and it started to consolidate the space in the surroundings. However, Xian, who possessed the space Dao Law, easily reorganized the space in the field. After the space was reorganized, the barriers of light in the surroundings started to break apart layer by layer, and it didn't take long for them to vanish without a trace. Xianxia and the others gazed at Xian when they witnessed this scene. Needless to say, Xian had surprised them quite a bit. Suddenly, the white-haired woman appeared before Xian and the others. She gazed at Xian, the Dao Law of the 5th dimension. Only the Dao Law of the 5th dimension could destroy her spatial Dao Law with such ease. Xian nodded. It's the Dao Law of the 5th dimension. The white-haired woman gazed at Xian. You're really annoying. I should have shown myself to deal with you. Xian smiled and said, Actually, I don't have any ill intentions towards you. Really, I only came here to fulfill my promise to Xiaoqi. However, I didn't expect that you'd already been messing with me. I don't understand, is the temptation of this pagoda really that great? Even an existence like you is interested in it. The white-haired woman said flatly, Not great? Then give it to me. Xian opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. Xian looked at the white-haired woman. See? I wouldn't give it to you even if I threw it away. As he spoke, he tossed the prison pagoda down. Everyone, the white-haired woman looked at Xian and her face was terrifyingly dark. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly transformed into a black light that smashed into Xian. Bang! Xian was instantly sent flying. The prison pagoda did not give up and continued to smash towards Xian. In the distance, Xian hurriedly said, Big brother, it's just a joke. Don't be like this. Bang bang bang. In the distant horizon, explosions rang out incessantly. Seven looked at the white-haired woman. It's time to end this. As she spoke, the executing heaven sword in her hand suddenly trembled violently. In the next instant, the white-haired woman's body trembled in fear. Executing heaven sword. This sword was used to punish the heavens in the past. Seven was about to attack, but at this moment in the distant horizon, a powerful aura suddenly appeared. Seeing this, the white-haired woman's lips curled up. It seems like you can't kill me. Seven raised her head to look at the distant horizon, and in the vast horizon, a figure was rushing over. The strength of that aura caused the expressions of everyone behind Seven to turn solemn. Seven raised her head to look at that figure and said softly, It seems like you're prepared. The white-haired woman laughed. What do you think? Seven shook her head and laughed. You think you can stop me like this? Naive. If I want to kill someone, who can stop me? Is that so? At this moment, that powerful aura had already appeared in front of Seven. It was a middle-aged man, and at his waist there was a sword. South Sword Mountain. He was the sect master of Sword Sect when it was at its peak. P.S. There's more. Chapter 633. South Sword Mountain. Nangong Wan's expression sank when she saw this person. She had never expected that such a young person would actually appear here. This wasn't someone from this era. Jian Nanshan looked at Seven. Just as he was about to speak, Seven suddenly took a step forward and slashed with his sword. Something was being torn apart. The moment Xiaoqi attacked, the sword on South Sword Mountain's waist also unsheathed. The sword was like lightning, incomparably swift. Boom. A wave of sword light erupted in front of Xiaoqi and Jian Nanshan. In an instant, Jian Nanshan retreated thousands of feet. Xiaoqi had also retreated 1,000 zhang. Jian Nanshan looked at Seven, and for the first time, a solemn expression appeared in his eyes. Sword God. He wasn't shocked that Seven was the sword god, but that Seven was young. Reaching the level of a sword god at such a young age could no longer be described as terrifying. Seven still didn't say anything, and she suddenly disappeared. Buzz. The cry of a sword split the sky. Not far away, Jian Nanshan narrowed his eyes. His right hand gripped the hilt of his sword, and in the next moment he pulled it out. A wisp of sword light slashed down from above. Meanwhile, Xiaoqi's voice resounded abruptly, "Break." As soon as Xiaoqi finished speaking, Jian Nanshan's sword light instantly shattered, and so did Jian Nanshan's sword. Seeing this scene, the white-haired woman not far away frowned slightly. Jian Nanshan looked at the sword in Seven's hand. Good sword. Seven was expressionless. She waved her hand, and the executing heaven sword flew back to Zhou Xian. Seven looked at Jian Nanshan. I won't bully you. As soon as she finished speaking, she lightly stomped her right foot. Beneath his feet, sword light flashed. In the distance, Jian Nanshan opened his palm, and a wisp of sword light flew out from his palm. The sword light was as fast as lightning, tearing through space. Boom. In front of the two of them, two sword lights instantly exploded. Right at this moment, Xiaoqi suddenly leaped up. In the next moment, a beam of sword light slashed down from above Jian Nanshan's head. Boom. In the blink of an eye, Jian Nanshan retreated tens of thousands of feet. At this moment, Xiaoqi suddenly pointed at Jian Nanshan. Slash. As the word fell, a sword light suddenly chopped down from the top of Jian Nanshan's head. In the distance, Jian Nanshan grinned. Interesting. As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped his right foot. Rumble. The entire starry sky trembled violently. In the next moment, he transformed into a ray of sword light that shot into the sky. Boom. In the air, Xiaoqi's sword light shattered. But at that moment, Xiaoqi suddenly disappeared. Boom. In the distance, Jian Nanshan had instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet. But before he could stop, a sword light instantly tore apart Jian Nanshan's position. Boom. Jian Nanshan retreated again. This retreat was 1,000 miles. At this time, Seven's eyes slowly closed. After a moment of silence, she suddenly opened her eyes and pointed at Jian Nanshan. One sword destruction. A strand of sword light as thin as a hair flew out from Xiaoqi's fingertip. Wherever the sword light passed, the space immediately became illusory. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings instantly became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Because the illusory space had disappeared. Even Tendo's space Dao Law couldn't repair it. Jian Nanshan's expression instantly turned solemn when he saw Xiaoqi's sword. He still didn't take out the sword at his waist. Because Xiaoqi didn't use a sword either. If he did, then he would lose in terms of imposing aura. Everyone watched as Jian Nanshan slowly closed his eyes, and then an illusory sword suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, he tapped the hilt of the illusory sword with his finger. Boom. A sword howl resounded. The illusory sword was blasted flying. It seemed like it intended to pierce through the starry sky, and it was extremely formidable. Meanwhile, Xiaoqi's sword light arrived before him. Bang! The entire starry sky suddenly shook violently. In an instant, Jian Nanshan's illusory sword exploded into pieces. But Xiaoqi's sword light was still there. The sword light shot straight at Jian Nanshan. Jian Nanshan's expression remained unchanged. He took a step forward and tapped the sword light with his finger. Bang! The sword light was forcibly stopped by his finger. Suddenly Xiaoqi appeared in front of Jian Nanshan. Jian Nanshan's eyes narrowed slightly. In the next moment the space around them was covered in strands of sword light. This continued for around 15 minutes before the sword light vanished, and then Xiaoqi walked out from within it. The white-haired woman's face instantly turned gloomy when she witnessed this scene. On the other hand, the experts of the God Kingdom heaved sighs of relief. The sword light behind Xiaoqi dispersed, and Jian Nanshan appeared before their eyes. At this moment, Jian Nanshan's arms had been severed, but he was still alive. Jian Nanshan gazed at Xiaoqi. "Why didn't you kill me?" Xiaoqi stopped moving. "Why did you protect Tendo?" Jian Nanshan fell silent for a moment before he said, "I owed her a favor all those years ago." Xiaoqi nodded. "You've repaid her kindness so you can leave." Jian Nanshan asked, "Why didn't you kill me?" Xiaoqi spoke softly. "There aren't many swordsmen left. There aren't many formidable swordsmen left." Jian Nanshan took a deep and long glance at Xiaoqi before he turned around and left. After Jian Nanshan left, Xiaoqi gazed at the white-haired woman. "Besides myself, no one can stop me from killing you." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished. The white-haired woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and then her body suddenly became ethereal. In the next moment, numerous afterimages appeared around Xiaoqi. Rumble. The entire starry sky started to tremble violently as strands of powerful force surged out incessantly. The entire starry sky started to seethe and it was extremely terrifying. However, as soon as Xiaoqi's sword slashed down, the afterimages instantly vanished without a trace, and the white-haired woman had retreated over 10 kilometers away. She stared fixedly at Xiaoqi. "If I die, then the quintessence energy of the chaotic universe will vanish along with me. At that time, no one from the chaotic universe will be able to break through into the Imperial Emperor realm." Xiaoqi walked slowly towards the white-haired woman. "Are you threatening me?" The white-haired woman smiled. "You can think of it that way." Xiaoqi spoke softly. "I thought that you would die with some backbone. I never expected that." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished. A ray of light tore through the sky. Emperor Shi Yuan spoke softly. "You leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, he stood in front of the white-haired woman and slowly clenched his right fist. A moment later he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The space in front of Emperor Shi Yuan exploded apart, but it wasn't able to stop that ray of light. Bang! Emperor Shi Yuan instantly retreated explosively while countless rays of light sliced through his body. When Emperor Shi Yuan stopped, only his soul remained. Emperor Shi Yuan stared fixedly at Xiaoqi with deep fear in his eyes. However, the white-haired woman didn't flee. There were 3 old men behind her. She suddenly said, "All of you can leave." They gazed at the white-haired woman and the latter smiled. "You've repaid your kindness. You don't owe me anything." The 3 old men exchanged glances and then they turned around and left. They had no chance of winning. After all, practically no expert in this expanse of space could stop the ruler of the chaotic universe. Once the 3 old men left, the white-haired woman gazed at Xiaoqi and smiled. "It won't be that easy to kill me." As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm. In an instant, the surrounding space started to tremble violently, and it didn't take long for countless strands of spirit energy to converge towards her. It didn't take long for her aura to rise explosively. The expressions of everyone here instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. Is the Tendo going to detonate himself? What would happen if the Tendo detonated himself? The entire chaotic universe would definitely be affected. Xiaoqi's face was expressionless. Her left hand was already on the sword at her waist. Well, just then a voice suddenly came from the end of the space. As soon as the voice finished, a man appeared in the air. His speed was extremely fast and in the blink of an eye he appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. The newcomer had a long saber and a sword at his waist. Yi Zhantian. Saber and sword duel master. With Yi Zhantian's appearance, the white-haired woman immediately stopped. Seeing that the white-haired woman had stopped, Yi Zhantian's expression relaxed. "Your Excellency Tendo, your life concerns the safety of the entire chaotic universe. How can you detonate yourself?" The white-haired woman smiled. If I wasn't forced into a dead end, why would I take this path? Hearing this, Yi Zhantian turned to look at Xiaoqi. He was about to speak when Xiaoqi suddenly took a quick step forward and slashed down with her sword. Yi Zhantian narrowed his eyes and suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Hum. A sword's hum resounded and a wave of sword light exploded between the two. In an instant Yi Zhantian was knocked back hundreds of feet. After stopping, Yi Zhantian's eyes were solemn. At such a young age, your swordsmanship has already reached such a level. Back then he could also be considered a genius. But now, after seeing Xiaoqi, he realized that the person in front of him was a true genius. Xiaoqi looked up at the sky and said softly, "Tendo, how many people did you call?" The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi and did not speak. Xiaoqi chuckled. "I'll wait. When the time comes, we'll deal with them together. Otherwise, it'll be too troublesome." Not far away, Yi Zhantian looked at Xiaoqi. "Your Excellency, don't you think you're a little too arrogant?" Xiaoqi looked at Yi Zhantian. "Your name is Yi Zhantian. I heard that you're a sword and saber duel master?" Yi Zhantian was expressionless. "Why?" Xiaoqi chuckled. "Do you deserve the word, duel?" Yi Zhantian narrowed his eyes and was about to speak when Xiaoqi suddenly pointed a finger. "Retreat." A ray of sword light flashed across the battlefield. In the distance, Yi Zhantian suddenly pulled out his sword. Boom. A ray of sword light suddenly exploded. Xiaoqi was already at Yi Zhantian's position. At this moment, Yi Zhantian had already retreated thousands of feet away. Not only that, but the sword in his hand was also broken. Yi Zhantian was silent. Xiaoqi slowly walked toward Yi Zhantian. "Come, let me see your sword. Coincidentally, my god nation also has 2 sword users. Let them see." Hearing Xiaoqi's words, Yan Dao suddenly walked out. "Your Majesty, let me fight with him." Xiaoqi shook her head. "I don't want to waste time." As she spoke, she looked at the white-haired woman not far away. "Today you must die." "Is that so?" A voice suddenly came from beside Xiaoqi. Everyone in the field was shocked. Because no one saw when the person next to Xiaoqi appeared. Who was it? Chapter 634. To Xiaoqi's right stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wore a gray robe, his long hair trailing over his shoulders, mixed with some white strands. He wore a pair of straw sandals. At this moment, the middle-aged man was looking at Xiaoqi, his expression calm. "Zhou Yafu." At this moment, Nan Gongwan, who stood beside Xiaoqi, suddenly called out. As soon as she said this, the experts of the divine nation became serious. Woun's Zhou Yafu. This name was famous even in the divine nation. Because Zhou Yafu had been to the divine nation and challenged many of its experts. In the end, Zhou Yafu fought with the divine nation's lord, but the outcome was unknown. Apart from the divine nation, Zhou Yafu was like a god in the other 3 desolate worlds. When he was alive, Wuyuan was at its peak. Wuyuan at that time completely suppressed the Order Alliance, the Tang clan and the Demon clan. Just one person. And Zhou Yafu was known as the best fighter under the starry sky. The experts of the divine nation had never thought that Zhou Yafu would come back. Zhou Yafu looked at Xiaoqi. "Back then I saw a divine lord from your divine nation and he was indeed amazing. But I never thought that after so many years, an even more monstrous genius would appear in your divine nation. Little girl, the old man admits that in terms of talent, no one in this chaotic universe can compare to you, except for that Jian Zizai from the divine clan. But you are still too young." Xiaoqi smiled and glanced at the white-haired woman. "I also never thought that the Tendo here would have so many people protecting him." The white-haired woman was expressionless. "I am not allowed to have some friends?" Xiaoqi smiled and said, "It seems that the slaughter of the heavenly Tao in my divine kingdom had a great impact on you." Hearing this, the white-haired woman's eyes gradually turned cold. The divine nation's Tendo. In this world there were actually 2 Tendo origins. She and the other Tendo were born together. But back then that Wu Anning from the divine nation unified the eastern wasteland world. Not only did he sweep away some sects and families in the divine nation, he also targeted the divine nation's Tendo. The Tendo was naturally not weak, but that Wu Anning was even more terrifying. That year the divine kingdom's Tendo fell. The god kingdom's Tendo source was completely controlled by the god kingdom, which was why the god kingdom was so powerful. All those years ago, if it wasn't for the sudden appearance of that woman in a plain dress with the black tower, she would probably not have been able to survive until now. And after that she knew that God Nation would make a comeback one day. As such, she also began to cultivate and befriend human experts, helping many people with monstrous talent. As a Tendo, if she was willing to befriend others, she would naturally be able to rope in many powerful human beings. After all, she controlled the origin of Tendo. However, she had still underestimated the strength of this generation's divine master. At the side, Zhou Yafu looked at Seven. Let's fight first. Seven nodded. Okay. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly drew her sword. A sword pierced through the air. In the distance, Zhou Yafu punched out. Rumble. In an instant, a powerful force blasted everyone here over 10 kilometers away, and even Xiaoqi was pushed almost 300 m back. This was the first time Xiaoqi had retreated. The expressions of the experts of God Nation turned solemn. This was because Zhou Yafu had not taken a single step back. Seven looked at Zhou Yafu. 1 strong to defeat 10. You've reached the peak of transcendent martial god. No, I should say that you've taken half a step. Zhou Yafu nodded. I've been doing nothing all these years. Other than cultivating, I've only made a little progress in martial arts. Seven nodded. Then take a sword from me too. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm, and a strand of sword energy appeared in her palm. Zhou Yafu was expressionless as he slowly clenched his right hand. Seven looked at Zhou Yafu. This sword technique has been in my head since I was born and I rarely use it. It's called seeking defeat. As soon as she finished speaking, the strand of sword energy in Seven's palm suddenly disappeared. Almost at the same time, Seven's face turned pale. The moment the strand of sword energy flew out, Zhou Yafu's eyes narrowed and he punched out. As he punched out, the space in front of him suddenly began to spin. One punch to change the laws of heaven and earth. However, Seven's strand of sword energy pierced through his arm and through his chest. Bang! In front of everyone's eyes, Zhou Yafu instantly retreated nearly 1,000 miles. On the other hand, Seven was blasted back repeatedly by Zhou Yafu's punch as well. But she quickly stopped, and then an illusory sword appeared above her. At the moment this illusory sword appeared, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings had changed. Especially the white-haired woman. She knew that she'd underestimated this little girl. On the other hand, Yi Xian had a solemn expression on his face as well. Seven is definitely going to be serious. But it's normal. After all, Zhou Yafu is strong enough. Zhou Yafu's eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, there was a solemn expression in his eyes. Right at this moment, the nearby white-haired woman suddenly said, "Forget it." Everyone gazed at the white-haired woman. She smiled. "I choose to leave." Seven gazed at the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman continued. "If the battle continues, then God Nation will definitely win. But it'll definitely be a Pyrrhic victory, right?" Zhou Yafu spoke solemnly. "It hasn't come to that." The white-haired woman shook her head. "We can't stop her. Even if we can stop her now, what about the future?" "The future?" Zhou Yafu fell silent. Seven is only a little over 10 years old. What about when she's 20 or 30? At that time, would anyone be able to stop her? So, the only way to stop her was to eliminate her now. However, even someone as strong as Zhou Yafu didn't dare say that he could kill Seven. Zhou Yafu sighed softly and then he gazed at Seven. "Even though she has grasped the Tendo quintessence of the chaotic universe, you should know that she hasn't enslaved all living beings. Moreover, with her here to suppress and control the number of experts, the chaotic universe will be able to survive for a long time." Seven chuckled. "The Tendo quintessence has always belonged to all living beings." Zhou Yafu spoke solemnly. "Then do you know that humans are greedy by nature? Once all the Tendo quintessence is returned to the chaotic universe, then it's very likely that everyone will devour it without restraint. At that time, the Tendo quintessence will be completely absorbed, and the chaotic universe won't be able to produce any more Emperor Realm experts." Seven shook her head. "You're wrong." Zhou Yafu looked at Seven and Seven continued. "She grasped the Tendo quintessence for herself. Not only that, but under her interference, the chaos below will never end and she'll control everything from above." At this point, she looked at the white-haired woman. "You think of yourself as a god, as the master of the chaotic universe. My theocracy doesn't want a god. As for the quintessence, don't worry, my theocracy will take care of it. Perhaps we can't make everything fair, but we'll make sure that every talented and hardworking person has a chance to reach Emperor Realm. Many people don't lack hard work or talent, they lack opportunities. At this time Yi Xian suddenly spoke up. You're right, if I had Tendo quintessence, I would have reached Emperor Realm long ago. Everyone, the white-haired woman glanced at Yi Xian. City Lord Yi, keep jumping around. You don't have many good days left. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. What do you mean? The white-haired woman replied flatly. What do I mean? There are a lot of people who want that treasure of yours. Yi Xian remained silent. Many people wanted his tower and they were all very powerful people. The white-haired woman had said that this tower would bring him many benefits, but it would also bring him endless trouble. What a disaster. Yi Xian sighed. Xiao Ta, don't you have anything to say? The prison pagoda shook slightly and Xiao Linger's voice rang out. It said to move the 6th floor away. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian. At this moment 7 suddenly said, either leave or die. The white-haired woman fell silent. She was definitely unwilling to leave just like that. But if she didn't leave, Zhou Yafu alone wouldn't be able to stop 7 and Theocracy. After all, Theocracy was so strong, so how could it not have a trump card? Right at this moment, a figure suddenly flashed over from the distant horizon. Soon a woman appeared in the field. Seeing the person, the experts of Theocracy's expressions turned serious. Mu Nanji. The woman in front of them was the Tang clan's Mu Nanji, the most outstanding clan leader in the history of the Tang clan. Mu Nanji, Zhou Yafu, Yizhantian, and Jian Nanshan. It could be said that all 3 legendary figures of the wasteland world had appeared over the years. After Mu Nanji appeared, her eyes fell on 7 and she smiled. We meet again. 7 nodded. Mu Nanji smiled. Let me tell you my opinion. I think it's not a bad thing for the chaotic universe to be unified because it means the end of the wars. The people under us don't have to live in endless wars every day. But then she looked at 7. But have you ever thought that if the future ruler of your theocracy acts arbitrarily and selfishly, then the people of the world will live a life worse than death? Nangongwan suddenly said, Clan leader Mu, don't worry. Our theocracy's affairs are handled by the cabinet. His Majesty won't interfere. Moreover, as the Lord of Theocracy, he won't care about these things. Our cabinet is supervised by the Overwatch Council. Even if we want to mess around, we can't. We can't guarantee that the chaotic universe will be like this for generations, but at least for a long time in the future, the chaotic universe under the rule of our theocracy will only get better and better. Then she looked at Mu Nanji. The problem now is that we don't need the Tendo. We don't need the Tendo. Mu Nanji shook her head and looked at 7. If you really care about the chaotic universe and the people of the world, then I think it's necessary for her to exist. 7 asked, What do you mean? Mu Nanji knew. Her existence can be used to supervise your theocracy. 7 was silent. At that moment, 7 suddenly looked up into the depths of the starry sky. Almost at the same time Mu Nanji, Zhou Yafu and the others also looked up. There the starry sky was trembling. Soon, a giant appeared in everyone's sight. The giant carried a tombstone that was nearly 1,000 feet long. On the tombstone 2 large blood-red words were extremely dazzling. Yi Xian. At that moment the prison pagoda in Yi Xian's body began to tremble violently. At the same time a Yu's voice rang out in his mind. They found me so quickly? Yi Xian said in a low voice. Are they looking for me? A Yu said, No. Yi Xian froze. At this moment a Yu said, They're here to kill you. Yi Xian. P.S. There's more. Chapter 635. Along with the appearance of the giant, the expressions of everyone here had become solemn. Even Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafu's eyes were filled with a grave expression. In the starry sky the giant looked down. Soon his gaze fell on Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Everyone in the field looked at Yi Xian one after another. He was here for Yi Xian. Yi Xian fell silent. The world prison pagoda in his body was trembling. Xiao Linger said, It said run. Run. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Miss Yu, what the hell is this thing? Is it from the 5th dimension? Yu fell silent for a moment then said, It's not from the 5th dimension, but it's from a place closest to the 5th dimension. It's also the most powerful universe in your 4th dimension. Yi Xian frowned. Another universe? Yu said, The black-yellow great world. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, What is that place? Yu said, It's a place that has coveted the 5th dimension for a long time. Until now, at least 5 people have forcibly broken through the 5th dimension. Xian asked, did they succeed? You said, no. But you might not know what that means. For example, only the owner of the sword at the top of the pagoda is qualified to enter the 5th dimension. Because to enter the 5th dimension one must first pass 3 trials. The first trial is to sever all karma from the past and present lives. Only then can one's body and soul escape the restrictions of the 4th dimension. Xian asked again, with this pagoda, one doesn't need to pass the so-called 3 trials? You said, in theory yes. This stupid pagoda is in the 5th dimension. In any case, if you want to go to the 5th dimension it's relatively easy. It's like cheating. But I don't recommend you go. Xian was curious. Why? You said, your 4th dimension is pretty good. Why must you go to the 5th dimension? In any case I don't plan on going back. Xian said in a deep voice, are there a lot of 5th dimensional experts? You said, I don't know how to tell you this. In any case don't think too much about it because you might just be a passerby in this damned pagoda. Once it recovers it will definitely kill you first. Xian was speechless. The pagoda of prison suddenly trembled. Xiao Linger said, it said it won't. Brother, don't listen to Big Sister Ayu. Big Sister Ayu is very bad. At this time, Ayu suddenly rushed out of the 5th floor, grabbed the world prison pagoda and gave it a vicious beating. In the depths of the starry sky the giant looked down at Xian. In the next moment he threw a punch at Xian. As he swung his fist, an earth-shattering pressure crushed toward Xian. This pressure was so strong that it caused the expressions of everyone here to change. This punch was aimed at Xian, but its formidable force enveloped everyone here. Moreover, if this punch were to descend the world below would definitely be affected. This was an indiscriminate attack. Xiao Qi frowned slightly when she saw this, and then she transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky. In the sky, a ray of light slashed down on the powerful pressure. Bang! The entire starry sky trembled but the pressure didn't vanish. Moreover, Xiao Qi fell swiftly from the sky. Meanwhile, Mu Nanji suddenly said, let's deal with this person first. As soon as she finished speaking she opened her palm and a ray of white light shot into the sky. Meanwhile, Zhou Yafu stomped his right foot on the ground and shot into the sky as well. Meanwhile, Xiao Qi attacked once more. The pressure instantly vanished without a trace when the 3 of them joined forces. However, all 3 of them had solemn expressions on their faces. The giant moved his gaze away from Xian and gazed at Xiao Qi's group of 3. A moment later he suddenly smashed the tombstone down. It seemed like he intended to smash the world into pieces and it was extremely shocking. Xiao Qi frowned slightly when she witnessed this scene, and then she gazed at Xian. Lend me your sword. Xian nodded and then he flicked his finger. The executing heaven sword appeared in Xiao Qi's grasp, and then she transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky. Everyone watched as Xiao Qi's sword slashed down on the tombstone. Bang! The entire tombstone shook violently. On the other hand, Xiao Qi instantly returned to where she stood earlier. Everyone's expressions became solemn when they witnessed this scene. The tombstone had forcefully resisted Xian's attack. Xian's expression was also extremely solemn. Until now, apart from the world prison pagoda, there wasn't anything that could block the executing heaven sword, but the tombstone in front of him had actually withstood it. For the first time Xiao Qi's eyes were solemn and she turned to look at Xian. Do you know him? Everyone also looked at Xian. Xian said solemnly, I don't know him but he should be looking for me. As he spoke, he looked at the white-haired woman not far away. If I want to escape, where would it be convenient for me to escape from? He definitely couldn't beat this thing, so his only choice was to escape. And if he wanted to escape he could only escape from the chaotic universe. Tendo glanced at Xian. Is it too late to escape now? Xian said solemnly, then what should we do? The white-haired woman was expressionless. Aren't you good at bluffing, City Lord Yi? Go bluff him. Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the giant in the sky suddenly slapped its palm down. As soon as this palm descended, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed. It didn't seem like it intended to annihilate Xian. It seemed like it intended to annihilate everyone here. Mu Nanji's beautiful brows knit together slightly. What's wrong with you? As soon as she finished speaking she suddenly shot into the sky. In the next moment, the space around her suddenly trembled, and then countless strands of mysterious energy seeped out from the surroundings and blasted towards the giant. However, the mysterious energy instantly vanished without a trace as soon as the giant's palm descended. However, half of the force of the giant's attack had been dispersed by Mu Nanji. At the same time, Zhou Yafu suddenly appeared in front of the giant. He was truly too tiny when standing before the giant. It was like an ant standing before a human. Zhou Yafu didn't waste his breath and just smashed his fist forward. However, the giant didn't dodge and allowed Zhou Yafu's fist to strike him. Rumble. Before everyone's eyes, the giant's entire body shook violently. However, he didn't retreat. On the contrary, Zhou Yafu retreated nearly 1,000 feet. The expressions of everyone here turned solemn when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, the Tendo gazed at Yi Xian. "Aren't you going to deal with your own problems?" Yi Xian fell silent. The Tendo continued, "Do you want the entire chaotic universe to suffer along with you?" Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiaoqi looked at the Tendo. "I didn't ask you to do anything, so why are you talking so much?" The white-haired woman looked coldly at Xiaoqi. "Do you think you can protect him? This fellow possesses a precious treasure of the fifth dimension. How many people have designs on him? If you protect him, then your kingdom will suffer a calamity." Xiaoqi gazed at the white-haired woman. "Do you need to worry about my kingdom? Do you?" The white-haired woman's expression was slightly unsightly. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "I will deal with it myself." Xiaoqi looked at Yi Xian. "You can't beat it." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Let me trick it." "Oh no, let me talk to it." Xiaoqi thought about it and said, "I will go with you." Yi Xian nodded, "Thank you." As soon as he finished speaking, he and Xiaoqi flew into the air. At this moment, the giant was looking at Yi Xian. Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafu glanced at Yi Xian but didn't say anything. Yi Xian opened his palm and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. When it saw the World Prison Pagoda, the giant's gaze finally changed. Right at this moment, Yi Xian roared in rage, "Suppress it." As soon as he finished speaking, the World Prison Pagoda appeared above the giant's head. In the next moment, a blood-red glow locked onto the giant. But Yi Xian was very clear that there was nothing to talk about at all. The giant was here to take his life. How could they talk about it? Only one of them would live. Moreover, the World Prison Pagoda belonged to Yi Xian, so why should he give it to others? Why? He wouldn't give it to anyone. Damn. Yi Xian directly utilized the strongest trump card of the Pagoda of Prison. At the instant the Pagoda of Prison appeared, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings instantly changed. It was especially so for Tiandao because she sensed danger. It was even more dangerous than Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi's expression was quite solemn. After the World Prison Pagoda was activated, even she sensed danger. After it activated the World Prison Pagoda, the giant's expression changed as well. Solemn. Yi Xian's expression was quite ferocious. "Do you all think I'm easy to bully?" As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed his right hand down. Bang. The World Prison Pagoda descended. In the next moment, the giant's body turned illusory. At this moment, a powerful aura surged out from within the giant's body. Rumble. Yi Xian seemed as if he'd suffered a heavy blow, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Suppress." The World Prison Pagoda shook violently, and then a ray of red light swept down. In an instant, the giant's body started to vanish inch by inch. The expressions of everyone here changed when they witnessed this scene. The white-haired woman took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian. At this moment, she noticed that this fellow wasn't easy to bully. In next to no time, the practically invincible giant's body started to vanish inch by inch. In a short period of time, only half his body remained, and the giant actually wasn't able to resist at all. Right when the giant was about to vanish completely, he suddenly placed the tombstone in front of him, and then his body started to burn. Burn. The giant burned his body madly. In the end, his body transformed into strands of energy that entered the tombstone. It didn't take long for the tombstone to start trembling violently, and it didn't take long for the giant to vanish completely. However, the tombstone had split open from the middle, and there was a bottomless black vortex within it. A moment of silence ensued before a voice resounded, "What an ant from a lowly world! How audacious!" Meanwhile, the World Prison Pagoda returned to the center of Yi Xian's forehead. The white-haired woman gazed at Yi Xian with a hostile expression. At this moment Yi Xian's countenance was pale as a sheet of paper, and he seemed extremely weak. Obviously it was definitely the best opportunity to attack. Meanwhile Nan Gongwan suddenly said, "That's a teleportation formation." Everyone gazed at the tombstone. A teleportation formation? Someone's going to teleport over? P.S. There's more. Chapter 636. Teleportation formation. Everyone's expressions were slightly unsightly. If someone came, it would be an expert from another world. As for how strong that expert was, no one knew. At this moment Tendo suddenly said, "Destroy it." After saying that, she looked towards Seven. Seven raised her sword and a streak of sword light slashed onto the tombstone. Boom. The entire tombstone shook, but the executing heaven sword didn't even leave a mark on it. Seven shook her head. "This tombstone is special." She looked at Yi Xian. At this moment Yi Xian's body was shaking violently and he didn't look good. Seven said solemnly, "Nan Gong, heal him." Nan Gongwan nodded and then walked in front of Yi Xian. She took out a thumb-sized golden pill and fed it to Yi Xian. On the other side, the white-haired woman suddenly said, "Are you sure you want to protect him?" Shao Qi looked at the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman was expressionless. "I know you are very confident in yourself, but have you ever thought that the power behind this giant isn't an ordinary one? Protecting him is the same as directly facing that power. Aren't you afraid of destroying your divine kingdom?" Seven was expressionless. "What does this have to do with you?" After saying this, she led the people of God Nation and left. As if she thought of something, Seven suddenly stopped. "Do you have a map of the universe?" The white-haired woman looked at Seven. "A map of the universe?" Seven nodded. "How many universes are there around my chaotic universe?" The white-haired woman frowned. "Why are you asking this?" Saying this, her pupils constricted. Unifying the entire chaotic universe isn't enough?" On the battlefield, Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafa's expressions changed. What did this little girl want to do? Did she want to unify the entire four-dimensional universe? Was she crazy? Not to mention the white-haired woman and the others, even the experts behind Seven were shocked. Seven looked at them. "Can't I?" Mu Nanji looked at Seven. "Do you know how big the outside world is?" Seven shook her head. "I don't know, but it will belong to my God Nation in the future." Mu Nanji looked at Seven and didn't say anything. Arrogant? He had to admit that he was indeed a little too arrogant. Because the entire four-dimensional universe was really too big. At this moment Tendo, who was not far away, said in a deep voice, "No one has ever unified the four-dimensional universe." Seven said calmly, "I will be first." After speaking, she looked at Nan Gong. "Pass down my orders. Summon all the geniuses of the Chaosverse. So long as they are talented, whether they are martial geniuses or scholars, they are to be brought here. They will be raised by the 3 schools of the Confucian institution and used as reserves." Nan Gong looked at Seven and bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." At this moment Seven turned around and looked at Tendo. "You have a third choice, which is to join my god country. I will give you 3 days to think about it. If you don't give me a reply in 3 days, I will kill you. Even gods won't be able to save you." With that, she turned around and left. In the field, Tendo suddenly pointed at the tombstone. "You seem to have forgotten about it." Seven looked at the tombstone. "If they dare to come, then I dare to kill them." The Tendo was silent. Soon, Seven led the experts of the god country and disappeared into the distance on the giant gold dragon. At this moment, Zhou Yafu suddenly said softly, "This little girl's heart is really big." Mu Nanji looked at Tendo. "What are your plans? Leave?" Tendo naturally didn't want to leave because she belonged to this world. Where could she go? Moreover, she couldn't go anywhere. Because other Tendo definitely wouldn't allow her to go to other universes. Moreover, if she left this world, her strength would be greatly reduced. At this moment, Mu Nanji suddenly said, "I have an idea." The Tendo looked at Mu Nanji. "Maybe we can join forces with her." Tendo frowned. Zhou Yafu said softly, "You mean?" Mu Nanji nodded. She looked at the golden dragon in the distant starry sky. "She's ambitious and powerful enough. Perhaps this is our chance." Zhou Yafu and the Tendo were silent. After a long time, the Tendo looked at the tombstone in the sky and said softly, "The most important thing now is how to deal with the incoming expert." Mu Nanji nodded. "That's true. I just don't know what kind of force is on the other side of the teleportation portal. Then she turned to the Tendo. Don't have any ideas about that, kid. This person is not someone we can afford to provoke. The Tendo frowned. What do you mean? Mu Nanji said softly. What I mean is that this guy has a powerful backer. It's fine if he doesn't show up, but if he does, it'll be bad. The Tendo said in a low voice. Xiao Mu, what did you foresee? Mu Nanji said softly. Nothing. Anyway, let's wait and see. I'm going. I haven't been back to the Tang clan for a long time. I'll go back and have a look. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished. In the field, Mu Nanji looked at Yi Zhantian and Zhou Yafu. Thank you. Zhou Yafu shook his head. We're friends. No need to thank me. Friends. The Tendo nodded slightly, her heart warmed. Whether it was Zhou Yafu or Mu Nanji, she had befriended them all in the past. This time she did not expect all of them to return. No, there was one more person. Nanming Archfiend. The City of Order. After returning to the City of Order, Shaoqi immediately gathered the ministers of the God Nation for a meeting. Yi Xian was arranged to stay in a room. The one who treated him was Lunatic Kai. Suijing was there too. Beside the bed, Suijing looked at Yi Xian curiously. Is he okay? Lunatic Kai did not speak. Suijing was shocked. Is he going to die? Lunatic Kai. At this time Yi Xian's fingers suddenly trembled. Suijing quickly walked over. Yi shameless. Oh no, Yi swordsman, you're awake? Yi Xian nodded slightly and then slowly sat up. Suijing quickly asked, Are you okay? Yi Xian shook his head. It's nothing serious. Suijing still wanted to speak, but Lunatic Kai suddenly said, Let him be for a while. Suijing hesitated, then nodded. Soon only Yi Xian was left in the room. Yi Xian sat on the bed in silence. This silence lasted for a full hour. At this time, a Yu appeared in front of him. Looking at Yi Xian, a Yu said calmly, Do you think you're weak? Yi Xian nodded. Weak. This trip to the starry sky made him deeply understand how weak he was now. A Yu said solemnly, I also realize that you're very weak now. No, you have to improve your strength. Yi Xian looked at a Yu. A Yu said solemnly, First you need a sword. Use the sword to improve your realm. Realm is the foundation. Second, we need to open the 7th floor. Once the 7th floor is opened, you can learn that secret manual. With that secret manual, you'll be able to fight against any expert. Third, you need to improve your cultivation in the Sword Dao and attain the level of Sword God. Fourth, find Yanjia and the Dao laws on the 6th floor. Once all the Dao laws are in place, you'll be able to utilize even more of the pagoda's abilities. Meanwhile, the pagoda appeared in front of a Yu, and it hurriedly nodded to express its agreement. Yu pushed the pagoda open and continued, Don't do anything for now. Just improve your strength. Yi Xian said solemnly, Won't haste make waste? A Yu laughed coldly, Haste makes waste? Then are you going to wait for death? Yi Xian spoke solemnly, Miss Yu, is that Black Origin world more formidable than Divine Kingdom? A Yu spoke indifferently, Do you think a place that dares to target the 5th dimension isn't formidable? Yi Xian fell silent for a long time before he spoke furiously, Motherfucker. Every time one of them dies, another stronger one will come. There's no end to it. Do they think I'm easy to bully? A Yu spoke indifferently, Are you not easy to bully? Yi Xian was speechless. Yu spoke solemnly, I think you can't keep a low profile anymore. Yi Xian hurriedly looked at Yu. A Yu said, We must open the 7th floor. Also, you have to find a way to borrow those 2 swords at the top of the pagoda. The 7th floor. Yi Xian nodded. There was an unparalleled martial technique on the 7th floor. The Boundless Sword. If he could learn it, he might be able to instantly kill that Heavenly Fate sword. And the swords at the top of the pagoda. Actually, he'd coveted those 2 swords for a long time. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian said, Miss Yu, you're right. I have to improve my strength now. As he spoke, he glanced at the swords he'd extorted from the Star-Lord and the others. There were 17 Creation Realm swords left. 17 swords. It should be enough for now. A Yu said, You cultivate first. I'll go look for that fellow Yanjia. Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded. Then I'll be troubling you, Miss Yu. A Yu spoke indifferently, I'm not just doing this for you. I'm also doing this so that this damn pagoda doesn't fall into the hands of others. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished. Only Yi Xian remained in the room. Meanwhile, the Emperor Hound suddenly said, "Kid, I'm going to evolve." Evolve? Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Is it dangerous?" The Emperor Hound chuckled, "It's not very dangerous. Once I evolve, I'll slap anyone you don't like to death." Ah. Yi Xian smiled, "All right." The Emperor Hound said, "Let's do our best." Yi Xian nodded and spoke softly, "Let's do our best." A short while later, the Emperor Hound arrived on the second floor and activated its bloodline. Outside, Yi Xian withdrew the 17 creation swords. After a long moment of silence, he withdrew one of them and stabbed it into his stomach. Devour. It didn't take long for strands of pure energy to emanate from his body, and his body started to absorb the energy like a madman. In a distant starry sky, a woman was strolling through the river of stars. The woman wore a plain dress and her long hair draped over her back. At the end of her long hair was a purple ribbon. After walking for a short while, the space in front of the woman trembled slightly, and an invisible barrier appeared. The woman was expressionless. "You broke the rules." After a long time, a voice resounded, "I didn't target him." The woman slowly closed her eyes. "He almost died." The voice said, "The forces of the fourth dimension are targeting him." The woman suddenly opened her eyes and her expression was extremely fierce. "If something happens to him because of your fifth dimension, I will slaughter everyone in your fifth dimension." After a long moment of silence, the voice resounded, "If the three of you dare to forcibly break the fifth dimension, he will die." The woman suddenly roared, "I beg you to come out and fight me. If you exceed 2 strikes, I will cut your abdomen on the spot." The voice fell silent. Please no more. Asking for votes. Asking for votes. Asking for praise. Asking for praise. Chapter 637. In the starry sky, the plain-dressed woman stood quietly, her long hair fluttering behind her. The starry sky around her was silent. After a long time, the plain-dressed woman walked into the distance, disappearing into the endless starry sky. Order City. After Xiaoqi returned, she immediately sent out an order to the entire chaotic universe. Recruiting talents. The Divine Kingdom's recruitment of talents was undoubtedly a wonderful thing for the people of the Chaosverse. Especially the Imperial examinations. In the past, strength reigned supreme. Without strength, no matter how good one's knowledge was, it was all for naught. But now it was different. Even if you didn't know how to cultivate, as long as you had real knowledge, you could put it to good use. Moreover, in God Nation the status of scholars was extremely high. Rule the world through martial arts, rule the country through literature. Not only that, many experts had to obey the orders of some scholars. This was completely unimaginable in the past. Besides the imperial examinations, God Nation also did many things that were beneficial to the desolate worlds. For example, they attracted a large number of spirit and dragon veins, causing the spiritual energy here to gradually increase. Moreover, people here could also join God Nation to learn. In the past, the main resources here were controlled by the Order Alliance and other forces. It was difficult for ordinary people to improve, but now there were many ways for them to improve. In an instant, more and more people acknowledged God Nation. Loyalty. After God Nation unified the entire chaotic universe, it didn't pillage or pillage. Instead, it brought countless benefits here. This made the people below begin to acknowledge God Nation. Inside a great hall, Xiaoqi sat at the head of the table. In front of her there were more than 200 people. These people were all from the cabinet. The leader was a white-haired old man dressed in white. This person was God Nation's divine minister Yi Wenfu. In God Nation he was highly respected. Even Xiaoqi had to call him teacher. Yi Wenfu looked at Xiaoqi. "Your Majesty, I heard that you want to conquer other universes?" Xiaoqi nodded. "Teacher, what do you think?" Yi Wenfu sighed softly. "Your Majesty, the chaotic universe is large enough that it isn't easy for God Nation to manage it. If we go to conquer other universes, I'm afraid it will be a waste of manpower and resources." Xiaoqi was silent. Yi Wenfu continued. "I believe that what we need to do right now is to properly govern the Chaosverse and make it even more powerful than before." Xiaoqi nodded. "Old man is right. However, we must always be on guard against others. My Scandinavia, even if we don't unify the entire fourth dimension, we must always be prepared to face all kinds of challenges." Yi Wenfu nodded. "Indeed. My God Nation must be strong enough." 7 said, "Teacher, I will leave the matters here to you. I will be in secluded meditation for a period of time." Yi Wenfu looked at 7. "Your Majesty is going to break through?" 7 nodded. Hearing this, Yi Wenfu was overjoyed. The stronger Xiaoqi was, the stronger the heavenly kingdom was. It could be said that Xiaoqi's strength was of great benefit to the entire divine kingdom. After saying that, Xiaoqi stood up and left. In the hall, everyone bowed slightly and then left. In a corridor, Xiaoqi was slowly walking and beside him was Nangongwan. In just a moment, 7 came to Yi Xian's room. Just as she was about to enter, she frowned and stopped. Nangongwan asked, "Your Majesty?" 7 said, "He is going to break through." Nangongwan looked at Yi Xian's room and didn't say anything. 7 opened her palm and the executing heaven sword appeared in it. She hadn't returned this sword to Yi Xian. Looking at the sword in her hand, 7 said softly, "I don't know if it is my imagination, but I feel like you are rejecting me, right?" The executing heaven sword was silent. 7 smiled and released her hand. "Enter." The executing heaven sword didn't hesitate at all. It turned into a streak of sword light and flew into Yi Xian's flying sword. Nangongwan said solemnly, "This sword has no taste." 7 shook her head. "This sword isn't suitable for me, it is suitable for him." Nangongwan didn't say anything else. 7 said, "After he comes out, let him head to my cultivation room and book storage. If he needs anything, help him." Nangongwan was stunned. "Your Majesty," 7 said softly, "do as I say." After saying that, she turned around and left. Nangongwan was silent. 3 days later, Yi Xian walked out of the room. Outside the room, Yi Xian raised his head and faced the sky. The sunlight shone on his face, making him feel warm and comfortable. After a long while, Yi Xian took a deep breath. Void-piercing realm. After devouring 15 manifestation realm swords, he reached void-piercing realm from law-controlling realm. Of course, his realm was still on the low side as he was a few realms away from Emperor realm. However, he could only stop because he didn't have enough swords. Moreover, manifestation realm swords were becoming less and less useful. He had to think of a way to get Dao realm swords to devour. At this moment, Nangongwan appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. "Her Majesty instructed me to bring you to her cultivation room and book storage." Yi Xian looked at Nangongwan. "Seven's cultivation room?" Nangongwan said solemnly, "Yi Xian, can you not call Her Majesty that?" Yi Xian asked, "Then what do you think I should call her?" Nangongwan said, "Calling Her Majesty by her name is very disrespectful." Yi Xian walked in front of Nangongwan and said with a smile, "I don't think it's disrespectful. In my heart I treat her as a friend. What's wrong with calling a friend by her name?" Nangongwan looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian continued, "Do you think I'm not qualified to be her friend?" Nangongwan said indifferently, "You said it yourself." Yi Xian smiled, "This is between me and her. It has nothing to do with you, right?" Nangongwan looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, the people of God Nation don't really like you." Yi Xian asked, "Do I need you to like me?" Nangongwan looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she turned around and left. "Follow me." Yi Xian shrugged and followed Nangongwan. Soon, Nangongwan brought him to Xiaoqi's cultivation room. Xiaoqi's cultivation room wasn't very big, but there were 12 swords in it. 12 swords of the Dao realm. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the 12 swords. At this time, Nangongwan suddenly said, "These 12 swords were collected by God Nation's rulers. The owners of each sword have reached Transcendent Sword God." She looked at Yi Xian. "Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian said seriously, "What do you mean?" Nangongwan stared at Yi Xian. "Don't play dumb. You can't touch these swords." Yi Xian asked, "Did Xiaoqi tell you that I can't touch them?" Nangongwan was a little angry. "You?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Nangong Kingdom Scholar, I have a good impression of you. The last time we met, I had a good impression of you because you have a calm temperament. But now, is it because of me or is it because of yourself that you've actually become so impatient?" Nangongwan looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian said indifferently, "Xiaoqi is your godlord, but she isn't mine. You better not care about the matter between me and her. You don't have the right to care. This is the last time I'll be polite to you. If you continue to talk nonsense, I won't be polite anymore." He looked at Nangongwan coldly. "If you piss me off, I'll kill you." Nan Gongwan looked at Yi Xian. Are you threatening me? As soon as she said this, two black-clothed people appeared behind her. Yi Xian looked at Nan Gongwan and in the next moment, a flying sword slashed at her. Behind Nan Gongwan, two black-clothed people suddenly appeared in front of her and attacked together. However, as Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the two of them were instantly sent flying. Yi Xian took a step forward and slashed at Nan Gongwan's head with the executing heaven sword. Nan Gongwan squinted her eyes and directly left the cultivation room. However, Yi Xian's sword was still above her head. If this sword fell, she would definitely be dismembered. Very few things could block the executing heaven sword. At this moment, a long saber suddenly slashed at Yi Xian's executing heaven sword. Boom! The executing heaven sword shook violently and flew back to Yi Xian's hand. And in front of Nan Gongwan stood a middle-aged man. Yan Dao. The middle-aged man's eyes were covered and his right hand was placed on the hilt of his saber. His aura was locked onto Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Yan Dao and in the next moment, an illusory Xiaota appeared between his eyebrows. Seeing this illusory Xiaota, Yan Dao frowned. Nan Gongwan's expression instantly changed and she shouted angrily, Yi Xian, have you gone mad? Prism Pagoda. She had seen the might of this Xiaota. It could be said that in the entire Divine Kingdom only Shao Qi could barely resist this Xiaota. At this moment the prison pagoda suddenly shook violently and directly floated above Yan Dao's head. Being enveloped by the prison pagoda, Yan Dao's entire body was directly locked by a powerful force. Above his head a blood-red prisoner character appeared. Seeing this scene, Nan Gongwan's face instantly turned pale. If Yan Dao was killed by Yi Xian because of her, then she would really have committed a great sin. After all, an expert like Yan Dao was extremely rare even in Divine Kingdom. He could be said to be one of the top forces in Divine Kingdom. She had never imagined that Yi Xian would actually be so mad that he would really kill someone just because he said he would. Nan Gongwan said solemnly, Young Master Yi, it was my fault just now. As a person of great stature, I hope that you can be magnanimous and not hold it against me. However, Yi Xian did not stop. Below the prison pagoda, Yan Dao's body had already started to turn illusory. Nan Gongwan was both shocked and furious. She hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, Her Majesty has treated you well. If you act so ruthlessly, how will you face her once she comes out? Hearing this, Yi Xian slightly frowned. After a moment of silence, the prison pagoda above Yan Dao's head stopped and returned to Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Nan Gongwan immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian looked straight at Nan Gongwan and Yan Dao. I know that your divine kingdom looks down on me, Yi Xian. But it doesn't matter. I don't need you to look up to me. This time I'll give little seventh face. Next time if you provoke me again, I promise to kill you. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Behind him, Nan Gongwan said solemnly, City Lord Yi, Her Majesty asked you to go to her cultivation room to cultivate. She also asked me to do my best to help you. If you have any needs, get lost. Not far away, Yi Xian's furious roar could be heard. Soon he disappeared into the distance. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.